This man who looks like Liu is actually a very tender little bottom. Just because he got drunk, he muddle-headedly spent a whole night doing it hard with someone. But the most fatal thing is, no matter how he tries, he just can't remember who that person that night actually was. Rue is the captain of the Royal Knights, and on this day he is in the middle of demonstrating body techniques in front of his subordinates. With that aura, that face, at a single glance anyone would think of that kind of white moonlight, level jade-like young lord. A full set of movements, clean and decisive, directly convinced the whole crowd. But just as he is about to open his mouth to explain the essentials of combat, he suddenly feels a wave of dizziness and nausea. His vision goes black, and he directly loses consciousness. When he opens his eyes again, keeping watch at his bedside is his good friend, the medical officer of the medical corps, Pitu. Pitu looks like he wants to speak but doesn't dare. His expression so strained it looks like he might burst. Pitu is still wearing that look of wanting to speak yet stopping, and Rue's heart sinks. Could it be a terminal illness? If it is, don't hide it, just say it outright. Yet what he never expected was that the first sentence out of Pitu's mouth would be, "You're pregnant. It's already 3 months." What's even more outrageous is that the more Rue thinks about it, the more it adds up. He's been sleepy all the time lately, constantly nauseous. Whether he wants to or not, he can only accept this fact. Meta is gossiping like crazy. Who's the father of the child? This is royal level big news. Is it the crown prince? Or a duke, or a marquis? It turns out that the only ones who can make a man pregnant are those with royal blood. Because one of the blessings the empire's royal family received from the gods is flourishing offspring. The most absurd thing is this blessing. No matter whether you are a man or a woman, as long as you mate with a member of the royal family, you can bear a child for them. Only then did Rue realize how serious the situation was. What he was carrying was, in all likelihood, royal blood. What should be done? If the child was really born, the imperial capital would definitely be thrown into a storm of blood and carnage. He wanted to get rid of it, but what doctor would dare risk losing his head to lay hands on a royal heir? Pitu watched Rizu's face grow increasingly pale, and his own heart sank with it. There was something wrong about the child's identity. You've always been at odds with the crown prince, and everyone else's age doesn't match up either. Rue could only come clean to his friend. He didn't know who the child's father was, either. 3 months ago, he had indeed had relations with a man. He had been terribly drunk that day, and he could barely remember anything about that man. After hearing this, Pitu's scalp went numb, and he immediately began to worry on Rue's behalf. What do we do now? Should we report it? Rue pleaded with him in a low voice not to tell anyone yet. Until he thought of a solution, he begged Pitu to keep this secret for him. Rue was mired in unprecedented anxiety. He still had no way to deal with the little dragon in his belly, and the serial murder case in his jurisdiction remained completely without leads. Vice Captain Rena noticed that he had been absent-minded lately, that she had hardly seen him eat properly, and that he had even fainted once the day before yesterday. All she could do was urge him over and over to eat something and take care of his health. Who would have thought their captain was suffering from severe morning sickness? Just a whiff of meat would make his stomach churn violently. So as not to let anyone notice anything unusual, he could only eat some fruit and bread every day. Seeing how worried Rena looked, Rue had no choice but to say, "I've just been too busy lately." Rena thought about it and realized it was true. 5 people had died in just 3 short months, and before they died, they had all been brutally assaulted. This case had triggered public panic and drawn high-level attention. The common traits of the victims were short black hair and fair skin. The only clue now was the piece of satin tied to the first victim's body. That was a tribute reserved for the royal family. That meant the killer was either rich or powerful, and most likely someone from the 1st Guard Regiment's jurisdiction. All signs pointed to the same conclusion. After committing the murders, the killer moved the bodies back into their jurisdiction. But the problem was, letting that jurisdiction investigate on its own was completely useless. We had submitted several requests for assistance to the 1st Guard Regiment, and they had all vanished like stones sinking into the sea. Rue sighed. "We sent in another request today. Let's wait a bit longer." Rena exploded on the spot. "Waiting won't help no matter how long we wait. That lunatic has it in for the commander. How could he possibly agree?" Rue's heart sank at her words. This girl really had no sense of self-preservation. He immediately snapped a cold warning. "Watch your mouth. Just that one sentence you said is enough to get you sentenced to death." Rena was shaking with anger. "What did I say that was wrong? There's clearly something wrong with that man. As long as it's a letter from the commander, he won't even look at it." Rue could only swallow his temper, utterly helpless. Apparently, he would have to make the trip himself. But Rena said that she had been going there every day lately, and they had refused to see her even once. At that moment, a voice suddenly cut them off. "Calm down, Vice Commander." Thinking, "One's elapsed." The 2 of them looked up, It was their superior, Rio. Rio said there would be a masquerade ball at the Royal tonight, and that person should attend, so why not just go to the ball and corner him there? Rue felt this was a workable idea, but the next second he got stuck. Did he have an invitation himself? As it turned out, Rue also thought this was a workable idea, but he was worried about the invitation. Rio, however, said of course he had one. If even the core leader didn't get an invitation, it wouldn't count as an official party. Rue accepted the invitation, but didn't hold out much hope. Just being able to strike up a conversation would already be good. He only wanted to clearly explain the matter the two of them needed to handle. Rina, however, was so excited she directly cut him off. I get it all. You go back and rest first, don't keep brooding over this. When you see a pretty girl tonight, go ask her for a dance and start a romance. Rio also looked thrilled and chimed in to cheer him on. Rue almost fell silent. What on earth were his subordinates actually worried about? A guard from the 1st Guard Corps came to report, "Your Highness, how should we handle the letter sent by the 1st Guard Corps? How should we handle the letter sent by the 2nd Guard Corps? How should we handle the letter sent by the 3rd Guard Corps?" The person seated in the main seat let out a cold snort. They really don't give up. How else should we handle it? Of course, we wait for him to come to me in person. Rue had just stepped through the door at home when his younger sister Joan threw herself straight into his arms. She complained aggrievedly that her brother hadn't come home for so long that even this hug felt unfamiliar. But when she heard that her brother was going to take her to the Royal Masquerade Ball, she immediately rushed off to get dressed up, thinking, one's elapsed, who made her brother so dazzling that when she stood next to him, she always seemed overshadowed. Rue couldn't do anything about Joan and could only remind them of the departure time. The butler, smiling at the side, picked up the topic. They won't listen right now. Young master, don't find it troublesome, and take the young lady to attend more of these banquets. And also, while you're at it, look for a girl you fancy. Rue shook his head helplessly. Had he reached the age where people started pushing him to get married? Seeing his reaction, the butler tentatively asked, "Young master, do you already have someone?" Rue immediately explained, "No, I really don't." But the butler didn't believe him and went on muttering, "The last time the young master came home was still for that banquet 3 months ago. But that night you didn't come back at all, and only entered the door the next afternoon. There's no need to be shy about this kind of thing. It's just that we don't know which lady she is." Rue snapped irritably, "Hadian, didn't I say there isn't anyone?" As the words left his mouth, he looked at the old man who had raised him, and his tone lowered a bit. "It's not what you're thinking. Sorry, I was too impulsive just now." The butler lowered his head in guilt and asked for punishment. "It's all right. It was hard for you to come back, young master. You must be very tired and need a good rest." It's this old servant who did not think things through. Lying in the bathtub, Rue kept replaying the scenes from that night in his mind. That night, he only remembered that person tormenting him for a long time. When he woke up the next day, all that was left beside him was a note telling him to go look for the other party. But he couldn't recall that person's face at all. He only remembered having had some drinks at the party, and after that, all his memories became completely blurred. When he was putting on his clothes, he thought to himself, just take that as a mistake. Slowly putting his clothes on properly, he had nothing much left to lose anyway. He hadn't expected it to leave him with such a big mess. By the time Rue was fully dressed, the butler had also brought over the mask. Seeing the mask, his heart tightened. He had worn this very one last time too. After all, at this kind of ball where the purpose is socializing, everyone usually wears the same style of mask, and the mask is just for decoration. And so Rue, bringing the elaborately dressed Joan, got into the carriage and set off. When they reached the entrance of the banquet, Rue suddenly shrank back a little. After all, that man might also be inside. Setting aside gentlemanly etiquette for the moment, he still held Joan's hand and led her in. The moment they entered, the two of them became the focus of the entire hall. After all, Rue was not only good-looking, his family background was dazzling. He dreaded dealing with this kind of occasion the most, so he took Joan and retreated toward a quieter spot. Before long, Joan was politely invited to dance. Just as well, Rue also needed to go find the person he wanted to meet. He had barely taken a few steps when he saw His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, surrounded tightly by a crowd of women. With so many pretty young ladies flocking around him, that man was, as expected, still thoroughly unlikable. Everyone, hurry and come watch. The two people whose relationship had always been terrible were finally about to face each other head-on. Could Rue obtain the Crown Prince's help? Even if he really didn't want to approach the man surrounded by that flock of women, he could only brace himself, walk up to the Crown Prince, drop to one knee in proper form, bowing as he saluted. "Your Highness, long time no see," thinking, one's elapsed. But the Crown Prince in front of him only stared at him without saying a word, and anyone could see. He was very angry right now. Immediately, whispers rose all around. So it was true. Looks like their relationship is so bad they're practically at each other's throats. Rue, kneeling on one knee, listened to those comments, and his chest suddenly tightened. They had been so close as children. Why did he hate him this much now? A moment later, the crown prince finally spoke. "You're still calling me your highness at this masquerade ball. Did you come here on purpose just to ruin my mood?" Rue lifted his eyes to him and asked quietly, "Then how should I address you?" The crown prince chuckled and directly gave his own name, Metal. For a second, Rue thought he had misheard, but the collective gasp of astonishment around them told him he hadn't. My God. Then the crown prince asked him, "So tell me, what should I call you?" Rue answered at once, "You can call me whatever you want." The crown prince was clearly displeased again. "How boring. Then I'll call you Little White Rabbit." Rue froze. What kind of name was that? What on earth did he have to do with a little white rabbit? But once the crown prince explained, the circle of people nearby were stunned speechless, because the crown prince said Rue was like that little white rabbit he had almost gotten his hands on some time ago. Then the crown prince stretched out his hand and said with a smile, "Get up, Little White Rabbit." Rue, who had somehow become Little White Rabbit for no reason, could only put his hand out. After pulling him up, the crown prince grabbed his arm again and frowned. "Why are you so thin lately? Have you not been eating properly? You have to understand, for a knight, this kind of profession requires the body to be in optimal condition at all times." Rue complained inwardly, "He's really meddling too much." But out loud he still said, "Work has been too busy lately. Sometimes I just can't manage everything." The crown prince immediately mocked him. "So many excuses. Anyone listening would think you've solved countless cases." As soon as Rue heard that, he flared up. If the cases aren't getting solved, isn't it still because the crown prince won't cooperate? He still held back his temper and respectfully requested, "I happen to have something to report. I know you should be enjoying the ball right now, but could I ask for a bit of your time?" After speaking, Rue was already running through the scenario in his mind. If the crown prince is even slightly displeased, he'll turn him down outright. He hurried to think if there was any other reason that could persuade the crown prince. But unexpectedly, the crown prince agreed right away. "Fine. Do you want to say it here? Or find a quiet place?" Rue hadn't expected him to be so easy to talk to today either. Of course they needed to find a quiet place. He definitely didn't want to be surrounded and stared at, but the onlookers who came to watch the show would never agree. How can His Royal Highness the Crown Prince take Sir Rue away alone? Sir Rue hasn't shown up in so long. What exactly is their relationship? The secluded courtyard should have been the best place for a private meeting. Yet these two somehow forced the atmosphere to turn icy. The Crown Prince raised his hand, took off his mask, and tossed it straight onto the ground. He turned his head slightly and fixed his gaze on the little white rabbit in front of him. The moment Rue met his eyes, his gaze instinctively dodged to the side. Just that one look completely annoyed the Crown Prince. "Do you have to look at me with those eyes? Am I really someone you have to avoid like that?" This sentence gave Rue a jolt of fright. How is that possible? The Crown Prince let out a cold snort. "When have you ever not hidden from me like this?" Bitterness rose in Rue's heart. Who told the Crown Prince to look so dangerous? And on top of that, to absolutely despise him. He was just afraid he would lose control. Of course, he would never admit that. The Crown Prince did not continue to make things difficult and went straight to the point. "What did you come to see me about?" Rue immediately explained his purpose for coming, only to be met with a wave of mockery from the Crown Prince. "Rumors about your incompetence at handling matters are all over the place." Rue almost wanted to pounce on him and tear him apart with his teeth. "Here's the situation. We've discovered that the killer may be in the First Guard District. It may also involve members of the royal family, so we're hoping you will cooperate with the investigation, so that we can catch the killer as soon as possible. So, I'm begging you." But the Crown Prince responded with a line that almost made Rue cough up blood. "Or what? Why should I help you? You only come to me when you need me, don't you?" Rue was momentarily at a loss for words. The two of them already took a dislike to each other whenever they happened to run into one another. How could he possibly seek him out for no reason? He could only hurriedly defend himself. "Your Highness, it's not like that." As soon as Rue said, "Your Highness, it's not like that," the Crown Prince cut him off directly. "Did I tell you to address me that way?" He had even taken off his mask. How would Rue dare call him by his name directly? What's more, he had no memory of that night, and Rue had even considered the child's father might actually be the Crown Prince. He had still been holding on to a sliver of hope, but thinking about it now, it was absolutely impossible. "Lord Maitre, I know you really dislike me. Whatever conditions you have, I can agree to all of them. But please think it over carefully and don't drag innocent people into this. Seeing this little white rabbit about to jump into the trap on his own, the crown prince rose to his feet and slowly closed in. Is that so? You'll agree to any conditions? Rue could only brace himself and nodded slightly. Suddenly, the crown prince raised his hand, took off Rue's mask, and fixed his gaze firmly on his eyes. Suddenly, the crown prince raised his hand, tore off Rue's mask, and stared into his eyes. Then you'll take the place of my little white rabbit. You have no idea how much I've suffered since the little white rabbit ran away. What does your little white rabbit look like? I'll help you catch him and bring him back. Rue forced himself to speak, but his voice was unsteady. But the crown prince refused. A rabbit that likes to run away. What's the point of catching it again? What I need now is a rabbit that won't run away. With that, he suddenly ripped open Rue's collar, frightening Rue so much that he immediately raised his hands to block him. The crown prince, however, spoke unhurriedly. Don't be nervous. Even if you don't say it, I'll still agree to your request. You let the rabbit be the stand-in, and I'll help you. After he finished, he raised his hand and rubbed Rue's head. Bring the documents tomorrow and come to my commander's office. Seeing that he was about to leave, Rue immediately pressed him. The rabbit stand-in, what exactly has to be done? The crown prince stared at him, the corner of his mouth lifting. Naturally, whatever I want you to do. Anything was possible. For example, something like this. Rue never imagined that when he woke up, a scandal would already be spreading all over the city. When Rue was woken up by the butler, it was already nearly noon. The butler was still lecturing him patiently beside the bed. I'm sorry, no matter what, you still have to go to work. Rue looked dazed. Didn't I just oversleep? The butler didn't say much more and directly handed him today's newspaper. Ending in love? With a soft snap, he finally saw clearly. It turned out he had actually made the front page news. The intense noises coming from the terrace were written as if describing a live scene. But had the butler brought the wrong paper? And that white rabbit that appeared in front of everyone was written like something out of a novel. The more he read, the more absurd it seemed. How could there be so much love and hatred between him and the crown prince? Yet the butler said this article was still considered normal. The even more outrageous ones went so far as to claim, "Young master, you're already pregnant." Which newspaper was this from, and how could they make things up so fluently? Rue thought of the crown prince's abnormal outburst last night, and how when he himself had panicked and rushed into the banquet, his clothes hadn't even been straightened. Exclamations of surprise had sounded all around him, and only then did he realize how disheveled he looked. If he hadn't run into Duke Raphael outside the palace gates, he would almost have believed that child really was the crown prince's. Raphael had actually been with him that day, and that sentence had been circling in his ears ever since. I've waited so long. It's time you gave me an answer. If the child really was the Duke's, what should he do? As soon as he arrived at the guard corps, he saw a large crowd of reporters blocking the entrance, as if they had been waiting there for a long time. Thinking, one's elapsed, thinking, two's elapsed. As soon as he arrived at the guard regiment, he saw a large group of reporters blocking the entrance, as if they had been waiting for a long time. Even more outrageous, that instigator, the crown prince, had spoken to the media early in the morning. In this kind of world, liking men is not wrong. Being obsessed with male beauty is not wrong. Male beauty itself is not wrong either. Those words directly ignited the reporter's enthusiasm, and he simply couldn't withstand it. Fortunately, Vice Commander Rena appeared in time and directly threatened to throw them into jail on the charge of obstructing official duties, which finally scared that crowd away. Sister Rena really is crazy. Once the two of them entered the commander's office, Rue immediately saw that Rena's expression looked like she was ready to eat someone alive, and his heart tightened. Could it be that I've messed something up again? It turned out that it wasn't his fault. There had been a woman missing since last night. A disappearance was not necessarily a big deal in itself, but the characteristics of this woman were almost identical to those in that serial case. Short black hair and fair skin. What was worse, they all knew her. She was a waitress at the tavern they often visited, and it was she who had personally served Rena dinner last night. The moment they thought that sweet girl might be in trouble, Rena directly grabbed Rue in an embrace and broke down crying. Right then and there, Rue promised that no matter what it took, he would find her as quickly as possible. Rue now had no choice but to go to the crown prince immediately, since the girl had been missing for less than 24 hours. He took the file and rushed to the first guard office, where the one receiving him was their vice commander, Rowan. Rue had no choice but to ask Rowan, "Has His Highness given any instructions regarding my situation?" Rowan smiled. "His Highness has other plans for you. Just hand the documents directly to me. When the time comes, I will search together with your vice captain. Rue was stunned. Doesn't His Highness need to look them over and confirm? Rowan said he could handle it directly on his side and told Rue not to worry. If even His Highness didn't need to see them, did that mean he didn't need to meet him either? But Rowan added another line. His Highness had been waiting for him to come. In the next second, Rue was shoved by Rowan into the Crown Prince's bedchamber. The man on the bed seemed to have been woken up. He sat up, his gaze locking straight onto Rue. Facing a half-naked handsome man, Rue's heartbeat still went wild, but given the man's identity, he didn't even dare to think about it. I'm terribly sorry. I didn't mean to wake you. I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to kiss you less. But the Crown Prince only said coldly that he should come closer. Rue wondered if he had misheard and could only brace himself and walk forward. Step, step. Just as he reached the front, the Crown Prince made an even more excessive demand. Before Rue could react, the Crown Prince was already pressed up against him. Yet the Crown Prince, who had gotten his way, wasn't happy at all, because he smelled a woman's perfume on Rue. He lost his temper on the spot, grabbed Rue in one motion, and shoved him up against the wall. Pressed so hard by the Crown Prince, Rue had no choice but to tell the truth. He had only gotten her perfume on him in order to soothe Rena's emotions. But the Crown Prince was like someone about to be dumped, obsessively fixated on Rue's relationship with Rena. Rue was pinned down by the Crown Prince, unable to move. This position only made him angrier. No matter how special our relationship is, this should still be my own private business. The Crown Prince sneered. Then when you came to me, was it for official business or private business? He added another line. If it's official, I'll call someone in right now to take notes. Before he even finished speaking, his hand was already reaching to undo Rue's buttons. That was his threat. Seeing that the Crown Prince was really about to call someone in, Rue had no choice but to compromise. Noticing him give in, the Crown Prince lowered his voice and pressed further. Then can I ask now, in your private life, besides me, who else is there? Afraid he'd do something even crazier, Rue denied it at once. There's no one else, not a single person. After hearing that, the emotion in the Crown Prince's eyes lit up instantly. After hearing that, the Crown Prince's whole mood brightened. For a moment it almost dazzled Rue's eyes. This man's temper might be infuriating, but his face was truly flawless. Seeing the Crown Prince's mood clearly improve, Rue hurried to drag the topic back on track, hoping the other would cooperate so they could catch the murderer as soon as possible. The Crown Prince also named his terms. He wanted Rue to come to his bedchamber every day and keep him company for at least 1 hour. Rumors about them were already flying everywhere, yet the Crown Prince still wanted him to come keep him company for an hour every single day. If they really did that, Rue didn't even dare imagine what people outside would be saying. No matter what, he refused to agree. The Crown Prince looked deeply hurt. Didn't you promise to take the place of my little bunny? Now that you've gotten my help, you don't want to fulfill your promise. Rue had just opened his mouth to refute when the Crown Prince blocked his words directly with his actions. Shudder. His face flushed bright red, and he completely didn't dare say another word, afraid that with one careless slip, something unspeakable would happen again. Yet he even faintly felt a bit of anticipation. What was going on with him? The little rabbit in his tight embrace finally quieted down. The Crown Prince lay down beside him and held him even tighter. Don't mind the rumors outside. Don't be afraid, I'm here. Just stay with me for 1 hour. That's all. As he spoke, he slowly closed his eyes, and before long, his breathing became even. Rue looked at him from such a close distance. This man was this captivating even in his sleep. Was the runaway little rabbit his ex? But I've never heard that he likes men. Could it be a woman who looks a lot like me? Forget it, it's just 1 hour, nothing should happen, right? Just like that, he drifted off to sleep, and in his dream, he walked into a forest so beautiful it didn't seem real. It felt like someone ahead kept calling him. He followed that feeling and walked forward step by step. Before long, a giant dragon suddenly appeared before his eyes. Strangely, he wasn't afraid at all. Instead, he felt a strong sense of familiarity. The next second, his legs were suddenly grabbed tightly by the dragon's claws, holding on for dear life. Startled, Rue hurriedly said, I still have things to do. Could you let go first? The giant dragon stared at him, tears falling non-stop. As each teardrop hit the ground, Rue felt sharp stabs of pain in his chest again and again. He suddenly opened his eyes, his mind still a bit dazed. Was that just now a dream? At this moment, a voice sounded right by his ear. Awake? Did you sleep well? Only then did Rue fully come to his senses. He hurriedly sat up and asked, What time is it now? The crown prince glanced at his watch. Almost 4 o'clock. Hearing this, Rue's scalp tingled, and a sudden headache hit him. What on earth have I been doing? While you were asleep, your loyal vice commander and Rowan's group have already gone to investigate the surrounding area. Rue was furious. You clearly got the report, so why didn't you wake me up? The crown prince stood up and walked toward him step by step. You were so busy sleeping you didn't even have lunch, did you? It's almost dinner time, but I'm guessing you don't have much of an appetite now anyway. Only when he said that did Rue realize he was actually hungry. He'd gotten up late and hadn't even eaten breakfast. Feeling a bit embarrassed, he said, "Just get me something simple to eat." The next second, the crown prince suddenly leaned in close to him. You haven't been eating properly. You've lost weight lately, you're not sleeping well, and your dark circles are this bad. Seeing how soundly you were sleeping, and I'm not some cruel person. There weren't any crucial leads either, so why would I bother waking you up? Seeing this man's hand starting to get restless again, Rue immediately dragged the topic back. There really isn't a single lead? The crown prince smiled as he pulled him up, his tone light, as if coaxing someone. You'll know once you go take a look. The last place the victim was seen was the tavern. We can grab something to eat there while we're at it. Rue was startled. You're coming with me? Is that really allowed? The crown prince tightened his grip on his hand, obvious delight in his voice. Walking together like this, doesn't it feel like a date? Rue froze on the spot. Why would he say something like that? When the two of them arrived at the tavern, they both knew there was at least an 80% chance there wouldn't be any useful clues. But Rue still went to find the boss and confirmed several questions once more. Feeling completely baffled, he turned around, just in time to see the crown prince walking back and forth between the tables. He walked over and couldn't help asking, "Did you find anything?" The crown prince replied with a straight face, "I'm just picking a seat." Rue was really speechless. He couldn't seriously be planning to eat here, could he? Rue only saw the crown prince shout to the boss, "Order here." The boss came over, looking like he didn't quite understand. "What would you like to order?" The crown prince turned to look at Rue. "What do you want to eat?" "I don't have an appetite." "Rather than eating, let's go gather information first." Seeing that he wouldn't give in, the crown prince said to the boss, "Bring a bit of everything. There'll be something he can eat." He then tapped the tabletop and lowered his voice to Rue. "Sit down first. I've already sent people out. Once there's any lead, they'll come report here. What you need to do now is fill your stomach." Rue thought being anxious won't help anyway, so he had no choice but to sit down across from the crown prince. But he regretted it immediately, because the person opposite him kept staring straight at him. Rue endured until his scalp tingled, then could only bite the bullet and ask, "Is there something on my face?" The crown prince suddenly reached out, his fingertips about to touch Rue's lips. "When you were sleeping just now, your mouth was slightly open. It was very cute. You kept humming, too. Were you having a nightmare?" Rue jerked backward, leaning away to dodge his hand. Just then, the boss finally brought the dishes over, abruptly cutting off the awkwardness. Rue had originally been starving, but the moment he saw the table full of meat, his appetite vanished. The crown prince kept urging him to eat, and Rue could only make an excuse that he'd been eating only vegetarian food lately. He picked up the spoon and forced himself to scoop some salad. Just as he put it into his mouth, a wave of nausea surged up and he threw up on the spot. The crown prince immediately stood up to support him. "What's wrong with you?" Rue only felt a little better after he finished vomiting, then realized the crown prince was still gripping his arm in a death hold. "Sorry. Could you let go first? I've just been eating vegetarian lately, so seeing a whole table of meat dishes is a bit hard to get used to." The crown prince didn't take in a word he said and kept yanking him along. "Come on. Let the imperial physician examine you." Rue panicked at once. If the imperial physician examined him, wouldn't he be exposed on the spot? No matter what, he refused to go. But the crown prince was convinced that if he couldn't even swallow a bite of salad, there had to be something wrong with his body and he had to be examined. Rue immediately changed his tune and said he had already had a checkup 2 days ago and nothing was wrong. After hearing that, the crown prince directly pressed him. "Then why did you go for a checkup a few days ago?" TSK, he really knows how to latch onto the key point. At this moment, a voice suddenly cut in, interrupting the two of them. "Because he fainted during physical training." Rue's physical condition instantly made the crown prince grow especially tense. The crown prince looked toward the woman who was bowing together with Rowan. Today, that perfume scent on Rue was from her. He had no mind to fuss about that now. Rue was what mattered most. He said to Rena, "You may rise. You said he fainted. What exactly happened?" Rena had already been holding in a bellyful of anger, and her tone was as hard as a knife. What else could have happened? I heard His Highness is terribly busy with affairs. Even the time to sign off on official documents is gone. Thanks to you, our commander has been so busy with this case that he can't eat or sleep. Before long, he might not even need your highness's special attention anymore. The crown prince turned his head and fixed his eyes on Rue. Is it because of me? Rue hurried to explain. It's not like that, but Rina kept adding fuel to the fire at his side. Am I not just telling the truth? It seems our big sister Luna really is genuinely fed up with the crown prince. Rue sharply cut off this girl who didn't know what was good for her. The crown prince moved closer to him then, his voice pressed very low. I may have unintentionally hurt the sir. I didn't expect you would take it so hard that you're not eating or sleeping. Rue could only deny it at once. He absolutely couldn't say he was pregnant. With things blown up like this, even he wouldn't believe it. What part of him looked that fragile? The crown prince's expression instantly darkened. You refuse to admit it's because of me? Then are you saying your vice commander is making groundless accusations against me? With that one line, Rue didn't even dare try to argue. One wrong move and Rina's little life might end right here. Seeing him fall silent, the crown prince spoke. Before we catch the serial killer, I promise to give you my full support. You may also borrow any manpower from me. Rue still didn't quite dare believe it and asked cautiously, Really? The crown prince went on. Since things have come to this, in order to make up for my mistake, from now on I will personally verify everything. Rue froze on the spot. What exactly did the crown prince mean by that? After listening carefully to the crown prince's explanation, Rue finally understood. He did not need to accompany the crown prince for an hour every day, but he had to stay with the crown prince day and night until the crown prince confirmed that he was already healthy. Wasn't that the same as eating and sleeping together with the crown prince? Rue tried to persuade the crown prince to give up this ridiculous decision. But the crown prince had finally seized this chance to keep this little rabbit firmly in his grasp. How could he possibly let him go so easily? He even wanted Rue to visit the imperial physician every day for a checkup. After that, the crown prince turned to Rina and the others and asked, Any new leads? Rina, finally realizing that she had brought huge trouble down on the captain, no longer dared to be reckless. She immediately put away her temper and carefully reported, one by one, all the clues she had managed to gather. However, after searching back and forth, there was nothing of real value. They only discovered that, near the previous victim, a suspicious carriage had appeared, but carriages were far too common. There was no way to keep tracking the case based on that alone. More importantly, no suspicious carriage had been seen the previous night. After that child left the tavern, it was as if he had simply evaporated into thin air. The crown prince tapped his knuckles on the table, his voice turning cold. Who was the last customer here that night? Rue and the others checked the records and locked onto the tavern's final guest. The waiter spoke haltingly, and there was an obviously fake name written on the bill. With that, they could be sure there had to be something else fishy about this matter. Fortunately, the suspects were all still staying at the tavern. The culprit should be in one of those 3 rooms, but they still could not determine exactly who it was. Since they were unsure, the group simply went upstairs to check each room one by one. When Rue knocked open the door of the first room, the door opened, and it was Officer Baker. Rue froze. It was actually Officer Baker, the one rumored to be especially loving toward his wife. Seeing the stiffness of Officer Baker's face from sheer embarrassment, Rue immediately lowered his voice to apologize. We're carrying out a search. Whatever I saw today, I'll pretend I never saw it. Officer Baker's expression darkened, and he slammed the door shut. Footsteps of the crown prince sounded from behind, and he suddenly burst out laughing. I really didn't expect him to be that kind of person. The crown prince immediately moved closer to Rue, lowered his voice, and added, I'm not a two-faced person like him. Rue replied coolly, I understand. The crown prince instantly felt displeased. What's with that tone? I've never cheated, and I've never juggled several lovers at once. Rue shot back at him directly. But you've also never seriously dated anyone. The crown prince suddenly laughed instead, his eyes lighting up. Are you getting jealous? Then he raised his hand and gently tucked Rue's still stunned hair behind his ear. If you had come to me earlier, I would never have done that. In my life, there will only be you. Only you. The onlookers behind them immediately coughed in reminder. Your Highness, mind your image, you're still on a case right now. Rue immediately lowered his voice. Don't say that on an occasion like this. Go check the other 2 rooms first. When they knocked on the next door, the person inside, upon seeing them, panicked like someone caught in the act and turned to slam the door shut. Rue hurriedly reached out to block it and forced the door open with his shoulder. Rue yanked the person inside the door, But when he saw what was happening in the room, he was instantly stunned. Taking advantage of that brief moment, the person violently broke free and jumped straight out of the window. Fortunately, Rina discovered that the girl was still alive. Seeing that the people arranged downstairs had already caught the culprit, only then did Rue truly breathe a sigh of relief. He walked up to the crown prince and said, "I really have to thank you for your help this time. Hangchi, I'm really grateful for your help this time." But the crown prince just stared at him coldly and said, "I always thought you were slow to react, but I didn't expect you to be this stupid. I always thought you were slow to react, but I didn't expect you to be this foolish." Rue looked utterly confused. Why is he getting angry again? The next second, the crown prince grabbed his left hand, already covered in blood. Only then did Rue belatedly feel waves of sharp pain. "Aren't you going to see the imperial physician?" In the infirmary, Pitu was bandaging Rue's wound. Who could tell him why the crown prince had followed Rue into the infirmary? He just felt chills running down his back, as if with one careless move, his life would be forfeit here. Risking his life, he finally managed to get the wound bandaged. The crown prince's expression was horrible. Rue, however, said that you bandaged it even better than the imperial physician, and even praised your excellent medical skills. Pitu immediately denied it. "That's not true. Rue only says that because he sees me as a friend. There's no way I'm better than the imperial physicians." "I think so too. If you really were better than the imperial physicians, you'd already be treating the royal family by now." Rue hurriedly tried to smooth things over. "I'm just used to having him treat me. You haven't even had the imperial physicians take a look. How do you know you're not used to it?" Rue had no choice but to say that he wasn't a member of the royal family anyway. The crown prince's headache worsened. How could anyone be this stubborn? He suddenly fixed his gaze on Pitu and said coldly, "I heard that 4 days ago you were the one who examined Rue." Rue refused to see the imperial physicians no matter what. The more abnormal his behavior, the more suspicious it seemed. The crown prince was certain he must be hiding something, and it just so happened that 4 days ago, it really had been Pitu who examined Rue. Yet the two of them insisted it was only mild anemia. The more the crown prince looked, the more wrong it felt. The two of them seemed to be covering for each other. If he wanted to know whether they were lying, wouldn't checking the medical record do the trick? Rue's heart tightened. Was he about to be exposed? Forcing himself to stay calm, Pitu handed Rue's medical record to the crown prince. Seeing this, Rue immediately tried to snatch it back, but Pitu grabbed him and pulled him back. The crown prince frowned and flipped through the record several times. Then his temper flared up at once. "Do you even know how to write? Is this thing meant to be read by humans? In my opinion, doctors aren't writing, they're drawing wavy lines." Pitu hurried to explain, "My deepest apologies. All genius doctors record things this way. If your highness requires it, I can write out another copy for you." The crown prince could only drop the matter, but he still fixed his eyes on Pitu and added, "Use your best handwriting and rewrite all of this from start to finish. When it's done, I'll check it myself." Pitu nodded repeatedly. "All right, I'll rewrite it at once." Seeing that he couldn't get anything more out of them, the crown prince turned to Rue. "I know you're in a hurry to get to the interrogation room. We'll set dinner for 8 o'clock. I'll have them make more dishes that are good for your health. I'll wait for you. Don't be late." As he spoke, he raised his hand and patted Rue on the shoulder, then turned to leave. When he reached the door, he suddenly turned back and stared at Rue. "Things aren't as simple as you think. Don't even think about running away." Rue could only nod stiffly. As soon as the crown prince left, Pitu immediately lowered his voice and pressed, "Is everything in the news true? That child? Is it the crown prince's?" Rue denied it at once. "No, it's impossible that it's his." Pitu's eyes dimmed at once. "Not his? Then whose could it be?" Rue's heart inexplicably sank. "It should be Duke Raphael's." Pitu suddenly seemed to figure it out. "Then that's not surprising. He's liked you for a long time." Rue was even more confused. "How did Pitu know?" Pitu rolled his eyes. "Anyone can see it. You're the only slow one. Are you planning to tell Raphael?" Rue shook his head and said he still wasn't sure. Besides, even if it was confirmed, he wasn't planning to keep this child. Pitu sighed. "No one can talk you out of something like this, but once you give birth to him, the royal family will take him away. By then, your life might never see the light again." He paused. "If you really don't want this, then make up your mind as soon as possible. It's impossible in this country." Pitu's tone grew heavier. "You have to leave the country as soon as you can." Rue had no choice but to ask Pitu to immediately help inquire about possible channels, thinking that once this case was over, he could take a long vacation. By then he would just say he was going traveling and no one should get suspicious. This child was too deeply involved, and Rue did not want him. Rue only wanted to wrap up this serial case as quickly as possible so he could smoothly go on leave. As soon as Rue entered the interrogation room, that little scumbag saw him and laughed. The officials they send just keep getting higher and higher. Will I get to see His Majesty the Emperor too? He knew very well that this little scumbag was not cooperating at all. The people before him had not even managed to get a single decent statement. Rue looked at him and said in a very calm tone, "There won't be any higher official. You were caught on the spot. Whether you confess or not doesn't matter. The news has already written you up as the murderer. With the social pressure out there, the judge will only speed things up and sentence you straight to death." The little scumbag was still putting on a front, pretending not to be afraid. "I wasn't scared into this. Don't think I'll start talking just because of that." Rue casually replied, "You're going to the gallows anyway. Whether you talk or not, it's all the same." That sentence immediately pierced through his composure. The little scumbag finally panicked and hurriedly argued, "I didn't kill anyone. I only took off Aimee's clothes. I didn't even touch her. That shouldn't be enough to get me killed, right?" Rue directly laid out the evidence. He said they had already found proof that near one of the victims, there was evidence of his presence. They had also found the drug he used in the crime. Supposedly, it was a kind of drug that could make people obediently do as they were told. After questioning him for a long time, the little scumbag finally loosened up a bit. He only admitted that he had accidentally killed that particular victim. The others were not his doing. Rue saw that no matter how he kept asking, he couldn't dig out anything more, so he coldly tossed out one last line. "Go back and think it over carefully. After all, getting to stand on the gallows isn't a privilege just anyone has." After that, Rena came to report. All the evidence they had found pointed to the deceased the little scumbag had confessed to killing. There wasn't a single lead in any other direction. Worse still, Aimee still hadn't woken up. The more Rue thought about it, the more uneasy he felt. What exactly was this drug? How could it be so vicious? Just then, the Crown Prince's butler came over, his tone respectful yet leaving no room for refusal. "His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is waiting to dine with you, my Lord Knight. May you go over now?" "May I go over now?" Only then did Rue remember this matter. When he checked the time, the agreed hour had long passed. What was even worse, if he shared a table with the Crown Prince and threw up again, that guy would definitely call the camp physician to examine him, and then there'd be no way to hide it. Besides, they had already caught the culprit. Just at that moment, someone came to report. Aimee had woken up. Rue immediately seized this opening, using the excuse that he still had official business to handle and could not go keep the Crown Prince company at dinner. The butler was clearly put in a difficult spot. "If you don't go, my lord, His Highness will be very disappointed." Rue only wanted to get rid of him as quickly as possible. "I'll go apologize in person another day." Meanwhile, in a dark alley, another corpse had been found. Rue had originally been thinking, since the killer had been caught, there was no need to keep playing this body double game with the Crown Prince. It would spare him the risk of the Crown Prince discovering his pregnancy. Yet who could have expected another new victim would turn up? And at the time of the crime, Little Brat had been detained by them the whole time. Given the current situation, Little Brat might not have lied. It was only the third victim that he personally killed. The others were done by someone else. It's just still unclear whether this was a copycat crime or if there is an accomplice. After Aimee woke up, she couldn't remember anything. They say that after taking that kind of drug, you'll be controlled by others. Whatever you did, once you're sober, your memory will be completely gone. Little Brat hasn't been reinterrogated yet, either. Rue told them to arrange it as soon as possible, and at the same time treat that drug as a key lead and keep digging into it. Rena said bluntly that they simply don't have enough people right now. Besides, for the past few days, almost no one in the Second Corps has really had any rest. Rue frowned and asked, "What about the First Guard Corps?" Rena looked utterly speechless. "I knew you were slow to react, but I didn't think you were this slow. The moment you refused the Crown Prince's dinner invitation, they all pulled out. And as usual, they're treating our official documents like they never saw them." "Are you serious?" Rue couldn't believe it, but when he thought of that man's temper, he also felt like he really would do such a thing. Rio suddenly spoke up at this moment. "I think the Crown Prince likes the commander." Rue couldn't figure out why he said that. Rio shot back, "Who would keep someone they hate by their side every single day? Besides, it's not like the commander truly hates him. You don't even care about the marks on your neck. You just hate people gossiping about you. That's all." Rue fell silent, lost in thought. The Crown Prince's attitude toward him was completely undisguised, like he was practically eager to stir up a scandal. Once elapsed. Thinking again of the Crown Prince's warning before he left. Could it be that he already knew the culprit wasn't that little nobody? Rena nodded along as well. "Indeed, the strangest part is, Just yesterday, he personally took the captain to the infirmary. No matter how you look at it, that doesn't seem like it was just to bully someone. In the end, Rue was sold out by the two of them together. The two strongly insisted that the captain go see His Highness the Crown Prince. When Rue arrived at the Crown Prince's door, he ran right into Duke Raphael. Apparently, he was there specifically to wait for Rue. Rue was even more puzzled. Instead of looking for him at his office, why did he insist on blocking him here of all places? Raphael held up the newspaper, staring at Rue to confirm. Is this true? Rue denied it at once. It's not the truth. Raphael's voice turned hoarse. What I feared most was that while I was waiting for your answer, you would already be with the Crown Prince. The next second, he grabbed Rue in a trembling panic. You're not mad, are you? I really have liked you for a long time. I don't want to pressure you. When you said you would think about it, you have no idea how happy that made me. I kept holding myself back from going to see you, from rushing you, just slowly waiting for your answer. But the moment I saw the news, I really couldn't hold back anymore. Looking at Raphael like this, Pitu was right. Anyone could tell he had fallen deep. That's why every time I saw him, I felt that subtle discomfort. I'm not angry. It's that I was too careless, and that let the rumors run wild everywhere. A sudden click cut Rue off mid-sentence. He lifted his eyes and saw a reporter in the distance take to his heels and run. Raphael wanted to keep talking, but Rue immediately pushed him away. He turned and fled, leaving this dangerous place. My scandal with the Crown Prince hasn't even been suppressed yet. If something gets out about me and the Duke on top of that, I'm afraid I'll really become the protagonist of the year's most melodramatic dog blood show. There's a very blunt saying, when you need someone, you draw close. When you don't, you turn away. Rue carried this out to the extreme. He hadn't expected that he'd have to go beg the Crown Prince again so soon. When he heard from the chief attendant that the Crown Prince had been waiting for him the whole time, Rue felt even more guilty. As the chief attendant led him toward the dining hall, he softly asked what Rue would like to eat. Rue froze for a moment. We're having lunch this early? The chief attendant's expression deepened. It's not lunch. It turned out that last night Rue had refused the Crown Prince, but the Crown Prince had kept waiting to dine with him and hadn't closed his eyes all night. Rue hadn't expected things to blow up like this. The moment he entered the dining hall and saw the Crown Prince, his heart instantly leapt into his throat. The man's face showed almost no expression. His joy and anger were hidden cleanly away. Rue thought that, no matter what, he had to explain clearly what happened last night. But the Crown Prince had no interest in hearing his explanation at all. Right after that, the attendants brought out dish after dish, filling the entire table. Rue was still in a daze when the Crown Prince asked coldly, "You can't eat this either?" Looking at the whole table of vegetarian dishes, Rue immediately said he could. He picked up his cutlery and began to eat. In fact, Rue really hadn't eaten a single bite since last night. But no matter what, he still couldn't put his mind at ease and couldn't help asking the Crown Prince, "You really haven't eaten this whole time?" The Crown Prince lowered his eyes, his voice very soft. "Yeah, so don't stand me up again in the future. If you dare do it again, I'll punish you under the charge of plotting against the royal family." Rue was left speechless. Is he trying to sentence me to death? Without realizing it, he finished all the food on the table. Only when he looked at the stack of plates in front of him did he belatedly start to feel embarrassed. Looking at the empty plate he had just finished, Rue suddenly felt a little embarrassed. After confirming that he was full, the Crown Prince smoothly suggested going to the garden for afternoon tea. In the greenhouse of the garden, the longer Rue stayed, the more he felt something was wrong. He watched the Crown Prince leisurely drinking his coffee. This man was actually not angry, and was even treating him so considerately. Rue felt a bit guilty and lacking in confidence, but business mattered more. "I'm really sorry about what happened yesterday. The case was too urgent, and I didn't think you would keep waiting for me." There was a heavy bang as the cup was set down. The Crown Prince was taking his anger out on the cup. The Crown Prince raised his eyes. "Oh, you thought what I said was a joke?" He started laughing again, but his tone grew colder. "Did you think that since the case was almost wrapped up, you could finally relax, only to end up finding another corpse? With something like this happening, you must be pretty rattled too." He paused, his smile deepening. "But even though you're so busy, you still came to see me, because you're worried I'm not eating well enough, right? It couldn't possibly be that you came to ask me for help, could it?" That sentence left Rue completely speechless. The next second, the Crown Prince's smile vanished. He lifted his foot, about to kick Rue's stool. Rue reacted with lightning speed and shot to his feet. The stool was kicked flying. Rue looked at the Crown Prince, the sudden turn of events leaving him momentarily at a loss. The Crown Prince tilted his head back, staring at Rue standing before him, and let out a cold snort. "Who gave you permission to look down on me like this? Even without a chair, you shouldn't be offending me this way." Rue hurriedly dropped to his knees, bowing his head to apologize. "I'm terribly sorry. Is he about to blow up? Why does his little white rabbit always want to run away?" The crown prince was holding back a fire in his heart. This time, the little white rabbit was in trouble. The crown prince suddenly grabbed Rue's chin and forcibly made him lift his eyes to look at him. "I clearly warned you. The game isn't over yet. Do you think the problem is solved? You think you can stop just because you want to? What now? Something went wrong and you've come begging me again?" Rue hurried to defend himself. "It's not what you think." The crown prince flipped his hand to seize Rue's wrist, squeezing even harder. "It's not like that. Then what is it like? Do you take me for a fool?" Seeing Rue frown in pain, the crown prince still let go, coldly flinging him away. "Right? You can't hide from me fast enough. How could you possibly come to me on your own? You must be very happy thinking the case is about to end. You finally won't have to see me, this person you hate so much. Unfortunately for you, I'll have to disappoint you. You still have to come see me. You're here to beg me for help, aren't you?" As he said that, he directly yanked Rue by the hair. "You were very cute, and I really would want to help you. But you acted on your own without permission, and now I don't feel like helping you anymore. So what do you say we do?" Seeing the crown prince growing more and more out of control as he spoke, Rue immediately lowered his voice to beg for mercy. "It's all my fault. I deserve to die. I really didn't think you would keep waiting for me." The crown prince didn't want to hear any explanation. He directly used his actions to seal Rue's mouth. Even with that burning sense of losing control, the crown prince still wasn't satisfied. He shoved Rue down onto the ground, and his hands began to wander restlessly. Rue came back to his senses and hurried to block him. "Wait, Your Highness!" The crown prince raised a triumphant smile. "Wait for what? You're already reacting. Why are you so easy to ignite?" Next comes the lights off segment. I'll stop my commentary here, and the rest you can fill in with your own imagination. A fierce showdown had just ended, and the well-fed and well-watered crown prince immediately began teasing his little cherished wife. "I was planning to punish you, but in the end, weren't you enjoying it a bit too much?" Rue was so embarrassed he couldn't lift his head, wishing he could disappear on the spot. The crown prince laughed even more happily. "You just ate so much that your belly is all puffed up, yet your body is still so thin, like a little goldfish, so cute." Rue's whole body tensed in an instant. Seeing that the crown prince didn't seem to take it seriously, he relaxed a bit and said while getting dressed, "Remember to come over for dinner tonight." The crown prince lifted his hand to touch Rue's face, his tone softening a little. "Sometimes I really don't know what to do with you. I can't bear to really be rough with you, but if you dare stand me up again, I can't promise what I might do. Maybe I'll do something even crazier than just now, right in front of someone you care about." A chill shot through Rue's heart. He hurriedly got up and dressed. He wouldn't actually want to do it in front of someone else, would he? The crown prince repeated it again. Same time as before, 8 in the evening. Seeing him about to turn and leave, Rue quickly spoke up. "Wait, I might not be able to make it tonight." The crown prince's face immediately darkened, and his earlier good mood vanished at once. Rue hurried to explain. "The thing the killer used is very likely the key, so we have to go to the tavern to gather information. People at the tavern usually stay until very late, so I might not be able to come back to have dinner with you." Because of Rue, the crown prince also more or less understood this case, and learned that the medicine had been sent for testing, with the results not coming out until next week. Wanting to figure out the effect of this drug as soon as possible, Rue instead had an idea suggested by the crown prince for his little pampered wife. "Is it really that troublesome? If you want to know what effect this drug actually has, just make that little scumbag take it directly, right? Who knows, there might even be an unexpected surprise." Rue followed the crown prince's method, and in the end really did gain a whole pile of surprises. After the little scumbag drank the medicine, he turned out to be exactly like the rumors. Whatever you told him to do, he obediently did it, completely compliant. Rue and the others didn't even have to put in much effort before prying the truth out of his mouth. Just as they had deduced, he had only killed the third victim. As for why he imitated the serial killer's methods, it was because someone had given him a large sum of money, provided the tools for the crime, and also that kind of very potent drug, making it easier for him to succeed. After he acted according to that person's instructions, that person would come and take the corpse away. But he himself didn't know who that person actually was. Using the same method to kill, that person always wore a cloak, and his face could not be seen at all. The one thing he remembered very clearly was the carriage that came to haul away the corpse. When it moved, one of its legs would drag on the ground and produce the sound of chains, clanging and clattering, extremely piercing to the ear. That night, Rue went to the crown prince's place as agreed. Although the steward received him respectfully, he still reminded him, "You've come rather late." When meeting with a member of the royal family, arriving early is the most basic form of etiquette. Rue had no choice but to apologize first. When the steward asked whether he was planning to serve the same dishes tonight as during the day, Rue suddenly really wanted to eat meat, so he could only hint tactfully, "Today it seems like we could have a bit of meat." The supervisor was also someone good at reading faces, and immediately said he understood, then turned around to make arrangements. When Rue walked into the restaurant, the crown prince was already sitting inside waiting for him. As soon as the crown prince saw Rue, his tone was displeased. "This time, at least you're not too late." Running late, Rue hurried to explain that he had been pestered by reporters and it took a lot of effort to shake them off. The crown prince, however, acted like it was nothing and directly told him to come over. Rue could only walk to the crown prince's side. The next second, the crown prince grabbed his arm and yanked him down hard. Rue was forced to bend down, and just like that, right in front of his face, the crown prince personally gave him a COVID test. After it was over, the crown prince looked at Rue, whose ear tips had turned red, and his mood clearly improved. He said lightly, "You didn't put any ointment on? There's no smell at all." Rue raised a hand to wipe his lips and could only shake his head. After Rue sat down, the crown prince suddenly seemed in high spirits and asked casually, "That fierce-looking deputy commander of yours didn't ask you anything?" Rue answered honestly, "He asked if I'd been assaulted." The crown prince grew even more curious and pressed Rue on how he answered at the time. Rue said at the time that he had fallen by accident. "Never mind Miss Rena not believing it. There's no way you in front of the screen would believe it either." Thinking of that scene in the daytime, Rena was furious. "These marks on your body, and you're saying they're from a fall? Who are you trying to fool?" "No, that. If you're afraid of losing face, then report it to the police anonymously. If you're afraid of losing face, then report it to the police anonymously." At that time, Rue desperately denied it, saying that he had not been violated. Rena stared at him and countered, "So it was consensual? You two liked each other." Hearing Rena say that made it even more impossible. But back then, no matter how strong the crown prince was, if Rue had really been unwilling, Rue clearly could have broken free completely. Yet he had almost not resisted at all. Rue lifted his eyes and looked at the crown prince's face, which was filled with a curious expression that practically said, "I'm waiting for you to go on." He could not help but ask, "The little white rabbit you mentioned, does it refer to a specific person? What else?" The crown prince's tone was light, yet it pressed down so hard one could barely breathe. "Do you think I would want to kiss an actual rabbit? But that's not something you need to worry about." As the stand-in for the little white rabbit, Rue at this moment only wanted to figure out one thing. The crown prince looked at the expression in his eyes that said he had to get to the bottom of it. He paused for a moment before slowly opening his mouth. "That is someone I've liked since I was in the academy." Even though the crown prince had always hated Rue and treated him as a substitute, Rue could not deceive himself. He really did like the crown prince, liked him so much that he had tacitly accepted the crown prince doing that kind of thing to him. So he became even more curious about the little white rabbit he was replacing. But if it was someone he had liked since the academy, logically speaking, Rue should know who it was. Back then, Metal had not been particularly close to anyone at the academy. Everyone was afraid of him and only dared to carefully address him as "Your Highness the Crown Prince." Rue had never seen him treat anyone in a special way either. After thinking for a long time and still not figuring it out, he could not help asking the Crown Prince, "Is it a man?" The Crown Prince admitted it very calmly. After all, the academy was full of nothing but boys. Watching him admit it so frankly, Rue's heart tightened again and again. If he'd started liking him back in the academy, it had been at least 10 years. Liking someone for so long with no result. Is this really Metal? The Crown Prince swirled his wine glass, his tone very light. "But he doesn't like me. Every time he sees me, he looks terribly embarrassed. At first I thought he liked me too, but things weren't the way I imagined. Every time I thought I was about to catch hold of him, he slipped away again. Even so, I still can't let go. Maybe I like him too much, so I just refuse to give up." When Rue heard this, he suddenly felt that he was truly an awkward existence. Seeing that Rue hadn't taken a single sip, the Crown Prince casually asked, "Do you not like red wine?" He subconsciously covered his stomach and immediately denied it, saying that he'd been abstaining from alcohol recently. The Crown Prince stared at him, at the way he was holding his stomach and looking sullen. "Not feeling well or can't eat meat?" Rue could only find an excuse. "Maybe I ate too much." The Crown Prince glanced at the empty plate in front of him, his tone tinged with amusement. Looks like the food in the palace really suits your stomach. Before, outside, you could throw up after a single bite of salad. You must have a palace stomach now. Rue thought about it, and it was actually true. For a while recently, nothing he ate sat well with him. Could it be the little one in his belly? Doomed to be delicate from birth. Since he was born so delicate, this little one can't possibly be Metal's. But he has no memory, so he feels it might be Raphael's. After all, that day he really had been with Raphael. Yet the more peacefully he and Raphael got along during the day today, the less he could control his mind from overlaying that blurry scene from that night again and again. But it couldn't possibly be Metal either. Metal had always refused to exchange any letters with Rue, so how could he have left him a note or anything like that? As expected, he was just overthinking it. The crown prince beside him had been watching Rue all along. Seeing him so sleepy he was about to doze off, yet still stubbornly forcing himself to eat. This wouldn't do. If this went on, his head would end up banging on the table. The next second, there was a bang. The steward was so startled he jolted, only to see that the crown prince had already placed his hand under Rue's forehead. The steward asked nervously, "Are you all right, Your Highness?" The crown prince stared at Rue's sleeping face and lowered his voice. "Keep it down, he's just fallen asleep. Looks like he really is exhausted." Just like that, the crown prince once again tricked Rue back onto his own bed. He looked at the sleeping Rue and reached out to gently stroke his face. He had always thought that in this life, only women had the right to touch him like this. "I thought that in this life, I could only watch you from afar like that. But now I've really touched you. Now that I don't want to let go, what am I supposed to do? I know that the moment the case is over, you'll definitely run away again. But at least for now, you're mine." Rue never expected that the moment he opened his eyes, he would have been written into the story as a scumbag two-timer. Miss Rena looked so fierce it was as if she were going to eat someone, and shouted at him, "I stayed up late working overtime. Not so I could come look at the chaotic mess that is your private life." Rue was still groggy. "Who am I? Where am I?" Seeing he still hadn't figured things out, Rena gritted her teeth and went on. "Excuse me, your boss plus 2 men, and the scandal is all over the place. It's almost evening and you still haven't come to work. Are you trying to make people die of anger?" As she spoke, she snapped open the front page of the newspaper and thrust it right in front of Rue's eyes. Rue took one look at the content and immediately hurried to protest his innocence. Rena reminded him to be realistic. Explaining is useless now. The whole country is talking about this piece of news. Just then, a hand suddenly snatched the newspaper away. The crown prince who had been sleeping beside him sat up and began to read carefully. Something about a duke confessing to the viscount multiple times. Something about the viscount explaining that it was fake. Something about the viscount explaining that it was fake. Something about the two of them being deeply in love and promising a lifetime together. Something about the viscount, however, being carried into that person's bedroom that very night. Only then did Rue realize where he was. His face flushed scarlet all at once, and he couldn't even tell whether it was from shame or anger. "It's not like that. My confession was sincere, but I never intended to toy with either of you." The crown prince narrowed his eyes. "You turned him down?" Seeing the prince looked like he was about to lose his temper, Rue could only tell the truth. "There's no way between him and me." Watching the two of them treat her like air, Rena couldn't help speaking up. "Then at least say something, will you? Do you know what time it is now? The 6 p.m. You haven't shown up to work all day. If I weren't worried something had happened to you, I wouldn't have bothered making this trip." The two people on the bed still ignored her, and Rena was so angry that she turned around and left. "I'm never going to bother with you again." Rue wanted to explain, but he couldn't even make it clear to himself. The crown prince, however, added fuel to the fire with a wicked smile. "But you're right here in my bed." That one line choked Rue completely. When it came down to it, the way he looked right now, he really did seem like a scumbag. Suddenly, the crown prince reached out and pulled him into a tight embrace, saying in a low voice, "Promise me you won't get too close to that person." Only after hearing an answer from Rue that satisfied him did the crown prince stand up and start getting dressed, unhurried and at his leisure. Only then did Rue notice that the back of the crown prince's pale hand was reddened in a large patch. But the crown prince merely said calmly that he was fine. After confirming that Rue still had to go back to work that night, the crown prince even considerately told him to take dinner back with him and not to come over again tonight. After another round of nucleic acid testing, the crown prince finally left in satisfaction. Once Rue had straightened himself up, he looked up and immediately saw Rena waiting at the door. Rena was clearly furious, and Rue lowered his head at once to admit he was in the wrong. Seeing how things had come to this, Rena could only sigh. "Forget it. I have a night shift anyway, and it doesn't really matter if you're late. I only came because I was scared you might get yourself killed. Tell me, what exactly have you been doing lately?" Rue thought about it. How could it not be like that? Ever since the day he found out about the pregnancy, his life had been completely thrown into chaos. Just then, the supervisor called out to Rue and handed him his dinner. They had barely stepped outside when Rina couldn't help but press him. Compared to the crown prince, wouldn't choosing the duke be better? Rue hurriedly explained. His Highness and I are not in the kind of relationship you're thinking of. Rina rolled her eyes. Not that kind of relationship? Then who was it just now who woke up stark naked in the crown prince's arms? Rue was speechless on the spot. How on earth did this girl get in there? By rights, without his say, so she shouldn't be able to enter at all. But the moment he thought of that threat last time, could that person really be an exhibitionist? Rue had no way to explain to Rina what exactly was his relationship with the crown prince. Rina couldn't help worrying and lowered her voice to warn him. Since it's just a game, then put your heart away. Don't let yourself fall into it. When the time comes and you want to pull out, you won't be able to. They hadn't gone far before Rue's stomach started growling noisily. The two of them had no choice but to find a place to get something to eat first. Not to mention anything else, the crown prince is indeed very attentive to Rue. The food he prepared for him is really very sumptuous. Rue chatted idly with Rina while stuffing large mouthfuls into his mouth. When she first saw so many stacked food boxes, Rina thought Rue was bringing a late-night snack for someone else. But when she watched Rue empty several boxes in a row, something suddenly occurred to her. Her expression changed. She stared at Rue in shock. Don't tell me you're pregnant? Rue's heart suddenly sank. Don't talk nonsense. Rina immediately started counting off on her fingers for him. Some time ago, just smelling meat dishes made you want to throw up. You were always sleepy, and you suddenly fainted, and now you're eating this much. And Pitu has also been avoiding the crown prince this whole time. Captain, are you trying to tear the sky open? Rue immediately stuffed something into Rina's mouth to block her from speaking. He also looked around nervously from side to side. Don't talk nonsense. If a reporter hears that, who knows what they'll write? Seeing that Rue still refused to admit it, Rina exposed him directly. Your ears are already red and you're still being stubborn? If you don't tell the truth, I'll go interrogate Pitu. In front of me, he can't keep any secrets at all. Rina was clearly determined to get to the bottom of it today. Rue was unbearably embarrassed and could only urge her to leave here first and talk somewhere else. Once the two of them entered Rue's captain's office, Rina hurriedly pressed on with her questions. Was it because the child is the crown prince's that the two of them have been acting so out of character lately? Now that things had been asked to this point, Rue had no way to dodge anymore and could only explain everything that had happened during this time, down to the last detail. Rina recalled that banquet. Rue was indeed taken away by a man. Both of them were wearing masks, but that man really was Duke Raphael. Rue had actually never wanted to believe the child was Raphael's. But after Rina put it that way, no matter how much he didn't want to admit it, he could only accept it. Rina lowered her voice and asked, "You won't accept the Duke? Is it because you never intended to keep this child in the first place?" Seeing Rue stay silent, she pressed further. "Who else knows?" Rue said quietly. "Only you and Pitu." Only then did Rina breathe a sigh of relief. "Good. As long as you're more careful from now on and pay attention, it probably won't be found out." Rina continued. "As for this child, there's probably no way to handle it within the empire. Are you thinking of going abroad on vacation?" Rue answered truthfully that Pitu was already making inquiries. Rina rejected it immediately. "There's no way you can take leave right now. If you suddenly go on a long vacation at a time like this, it will immediately arouse suspicion." Rue understood as well. "We at least have to wait until the case is solved. If the case isn't solved and the officer in charge goes on vacation, there's just no way to justify it." Rina went on. "But next month, no matter what, we have to find a way to leave. Once your belly starts to show, we won't be able to hide it anymore. During this time, you'd better keep a low profile. Don't cause any more news. Only if your popularity cools down can we slip away without a sound." In the early hours, the deep alley was excessively quiet, and Rue was patrolling back and forth at the mouth of the street with a redhead in tow. The redhead felt a chill in his heart. "Captain, don't you feel like someone is following us?" Rue deliberately teased him. "Are you afraid of seeing ghosts?" The redhead stammered in fright. "Didi, don't say that. I heard they love it the most when people bring them up." Rue put away his smile and pretended to be completely serious. "I think so too. It suddenly got cold all around us." "Captain, don't joke like that. It could really scare someone to death." The redhead had no desire to continue the topic. To divert his attention, the redhead asked in a low voice, "Captain, haven't you noticed that the vice captain has been acting really strange? Always spacing out alone, not talking, and constantly sighing. Rue knew very well that Rina was troubled because of his situation. The redhead couldn't hold back his gossip. Is it because of your scandal? Yesterday, His Grace the Duke even came to the captain's office looking for you. Rue was stunned for a moment as well. How come no one told me? Really? The redhead went on. But you have night duty and aren't around during the day. He kept waiting until evening. And in the end, the vice commander found some excuse and sent him away. I heard he even went to your house looking for you. But the vice commander told us to keep it secret, and it seems everyone did. Rue was even more speechless as he listened. Didn't want him to know? Yet they deliberately stuffed the most famous blabbermouth in the whole corps at his side. Well, looks like he never intended to hide it from him at all. The redhead immediately expressed his position. He strongly supported the commander. There was nothing wrong with liking men. It was just that he felt the Duke seemed more suitable. Prince Rina. Rue was completely confused. Could this really be Rina's idea? The redhead added another line. Duke Rina. But the most crucial point is, the commander likes Prince Rina. You've liked His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, since a long time ago? Rue was even more confused. What did a long time ago mean? The redhead was just about to explain. Back when we were at the academy? But right at that moment, there was a sharp clang that forcibly cut their conversation short. That sound was exactly the same as the carriage sound little brat had mentioned. Rue and the others followed the sound, and sure enough, they saw a carriage. And that carriage didn't go far before it came to a stop. Rue yanked open the curtain in one motion. Ah! Inside the carriage was a scene that made faces burn red and ears go hot. Sitting in the carriage was Seri, the royal duke, and beside him was a woman. Rue had already suspected before that Duke Seri might be the child's father. The woman was taken downstairs, and Red Hair went to question her first. Following procedure, Rue spoke up. I'm very sorry. This isn't about suspecting you. You know there's been a serial case recently, so please answer truthfully. Your address is on 2nd Street, yet at this hour you're showing up on 7th Street. What are you here for? Duke Seri spoke in a flirtatious tone. There are plenty of hotels around here. I can't very well take her to a hotel on 2nd Street. Can I? Besides, for this kind of thing, isn't this where everyone comes for it? Rue really couldn't understand all this roundabout talk. Duke Seri gave a cold snort. Still pretending with me? Haven't you people come here before too? Rue was stunned on the spot. Me? You mean that time 3 months ago? Duke Seri said with a smile. It was a long time ago anyway. It was the night of the summer ball. I saw with my own eyes you going into a hotel with a man. Back then I was genuinely shocked, and I was even planning to keep your secret. But when I saw the news a few days ago, I realized I still underestimated you. Rue said awkwardly. It's not that exaggerated. Just then, Duke Seri suddenly pounced on Rue and pinned him down hard. I knew it. You really are this easy. Count me in. Honestly, I'm very interested in you too. Rue's eyes widened in panic. Are you going for the ditzy little cutie persona? The crown prince, the third prince, and that guy who went to the hotel with you, so adding me to the list doesn't really matter, does it? Maybe it's not just those few, right? Rue himself could hardly believe that he could be described as having such a wild time. Clearly, he was already in a vague, ambiguous relationship with the crown prince and Duke Raphael. And then, out of nowhere, there was that stranger, the man who went to the hotel with him. Now there was even Duke Seri pinning him down, opening with, "You're so casual," and even saying, "It's no big deal if I join in too." But Duke Seri actually knew who the man was that took him to the hotel that day. Rue had been so shocked just now that he gave Duke Seri an opening, allowing him to pin Rue beneath him. In the next second, Rue executed a grappling move and directly reversed the situation, restraining his opponent instead. Rue warned in a cold voice, "Your Grace had better not resist. Assaulting a guard on investigative duty is a criminal act." Not wanting to make a big scene, Duke Seri instantly backed down, hurriedly saying that he understood. After Rue let him go, he learned from Seri that the man that night was not Raphael. But what could be confirmed was the man had red hair. In the royal family, the only redhead was the already married Marquis Aurel. Rue comforted himself inwardly. Maybe I saw wrong. It was too dark back then after all. Seri chuckled softly. Relax, we're not going to blab about something like this. Besides, we're not exactly clean ourselves, are we? Rue frowned. Your Grace, aren't you already engaged? Seri said carelessly. You're already fooling around with the two brothers, and you still have the nerve to lecture me? You're already fooling around with the two brothers, and you still have the nerve to lecture me. There was just no way to explain it clearly. I'm not going out with either of them. Seri, hearing him say that, became even more flippant and reached out to touch Rue's leg. Since you weren't serious either, then I have even less reason to be, right? Rue immediately grabbed his groping hand. I don't have that kind of fetish. That single touch made Rue's whole body uncomfortable. So it turned out that the feeling of being touched by someone you like and someone you don't like was so drastically different. Rue forcibly dragged the topic back to the case. They didn't know that the killer was not far from the carriage, staring right at them. At dawn, the crown prince spent ages picking out which gemstone to wear, yet still felt dissatisfied with all of them. The chief attendant laughed and said, "Your Highness would look good even wearing a plain rock." The crown prince puffed out his cheeks. "No, I want to look a bit better." The little white rabbit loved beautiful things the most. So in the end, he was still planning to use a honey trap, huh? He thought back to when they were at the academy, both still adolescent boys. Their favorite topic was which girl was the prettiest. He remembered very clearly. When everyone asked Rue who he thought was the most beautiful, Rue didn't even think and directly said, "Metal." At the time, everyone stared at Rue in shock. Rue, on the other hand, looked puzzled. "Isn't she?" He asked Rue, "Do you think I'm more beautiful than all of them?" Rue said he was the most beautiful person he had ever seen. Rue even blushed. In that moment, he really thought Rue liked him. But he waited all the way until graduation, and Rue still never confessed to him. Rue never confessed. Later, he stopped calling his name and only addressed him distantly as "Your Highness the Crown Prince." He wanted to transfer Rue to a guardroom closer to himself, but was rejected by Rue as well. Every time he got close, Rue would run faster than a rabbit. Is it because Rue noticed that I like him, so he wants to avoid me? Rue did not want to be entangled with the two brothers, so he had to clear things up with Raphael as soon as possible. From the very beginning, first, he suspected the child was his, and second, he simply had no time to deal with matters between him and Raphael, which is why things dragged on to this point. He knocked on the Duke's door. The servant who opened the door did not immediately invite him in, but instead looked nervous and asked him to wait a moment. After a while, Raphael's butler finally came over and led him inside. Rue cast a glance into the room and, not seeing Raphael, asked the butler where Raphael was. But the butler looked just as nervous and said the Duke had not yet risen. Only then did Rue realize he had rushed over right after finishing the night shift. It really was too early. He said apologetically, "I'm terribly sorry. I'll come back later." The butler immediately gripped Rue's hand and all but pleaded, "Sir, if you just leave like this, the Duke will certainly scold us. Please wait a moment more. The Duke will be here at once." Rue had no choice but to stay and wait for Raphael. But for some reason, the atmosphere here faintly made him feel uncomfortable. Even the fragrance of the floral tea the butler served made him feel a bit nauseous. Fortunately, before long, he heard Raphael calling him. He looked up. Raphael's clothes were covered in blood, scaring him so much that he stumbled back several steps. Raphael saw that he looked like he was about to grab someone away at any moment. He immediately explained, "Don't get the wrong idea. It was a deer. A very large deer. I happened to want to learn taxidermy, so I tried doing it myself for practice. Did I scare you? They said you were here, and I rushed over without having time to change." Rue's heart sank. Even if it was taxidermy, there shouldn't be this much blood. It looked more like a dissection. He turned his head and asked the butler, "Didn't you say he was still asleep?" The butler forced out a smile. "I thought he was still sleeping. Yesterday he kept talking about doing taxidermy. I didn't expect him to slip out quietly at dawn." Raphael pretended to be angry. "What are you thinking? You didn't really think I was killing someone, did you? If that were true, how would I dare stand in front of you dressed like this?" Rue still felt that everyone in this room was acting strange. If Raphael really was the serial killer, then he might not be able to leave here alive today. But no matter what, he had to first confirm whether Raphael was the culprit. If he didn't get to the bottom of it today, he definitely wouldn't be able to investigate anything next time. After all, searching a duke's residence isn't something you can just do whenever you want. I want to see just how big that deer is, that it made you insist on handling it yourself. Meanwhile, in the Imperial Grand Hall, the guard who had been watching Rue's movements all along reported Rue's whereabouts to the chief steward. Rue could tell that Raphael kept dodging the issue, as if he didn't want to take him over there. His heart tightened. Pushing further would be pointless, so he prepared to take his leave. He was just about to bid farewell and leave. No, that wouldn't do. How could he be allowed to go? Raphael suddenly grabbed Rue's hand, his face full of grievance. "No, you can't leave. Do you suspect me? I was just afraid of scaring you. If you want to see it, I'll take you to see it right now." In the deep, shadowy basement, the footsteps of the three people echoed one after another, and Rue couldn't help clenching his hand tighter. How could the basement of a duke's residence be built this large, with so many separate rooms? If he were to die in one of them, perhaps no one would even notice. When they were almost at the end, Raphael stopped walking, then took out a key and opened the door in front of them. As soon as the door opened, a strong stench of blood rushed out. Rue immediately covered his mouth and nose, forcing himself to look inside. The room itself was quite ordinary. The only glaring sight was a deer hanging in the middle of the room, covered in bloodstains. Raphael asked with a fawning smile, "Do you still suspect me now?" "Yes." Watching a first dissection can be a bit scary. I was afraid you'd laugh at me. Only then did Rue let go of his suspicion. He had originally wanted to step a little closer to see more clearly, but in the next second, a wave of nausea surged up violently, and he could only back out of the room at once. The few of them then left the basement and returned to the drawing room. Raphael asked worriedly beside him, "Are you all right? I didn't expect you to be this frightened." What Rue had feared most was that they would discover his pregnancy. Hearing Raphael say this, he instead felt relieved and only said that he had been feeling unwell lately, which was why he reacted like that. The butler also tried to persuade Rue to have a cup of tea to calm down. As soon as Rue thought of the taste of that tea, she hurriedly pushed it away. If she even threw up the tea, then something was really wrong. Thinking of the real reason he came today, Rue spoke up and said he wanted to talk with Raphael alone. With no one else around, Rue also wanted to make things clear as quickly as possible. "I'm sorry for giving you my answer so late. I heard you came looking for me, but I truly wasn't deliberately avoiding you." Raphael smiled and said, "I know you're very busy. You must be under a lot of pressure right now." He looked at that gentle smile of Raphael's. No wonder Rina and the others all said Raphael was the most suitable choice, yet Rue didn't feel the slightest stir of attraction toward Raphael. Rue bent down, his tone very serious. "I am truly sorry. I've thought about it for a long time, but I still cannot accept your feelings, Your Excellency." Hearing this, Raphael asked in pain, "Is it because of metal?" Rue froze and didn't answer, and Raphael's face immediately darkened as he grabbed Rue's shoulders. "I'm asking you, is it because of metal? Do you like him? Is that why you won't accept me?" Rue was startled by him and quickly made his words steadier. "Your Excellency, please calm down. It really has nothing to do with the Crown Prince. You are a very good person. You will meet someone more suitable than me." Raphael forced his emotions down a little, but still asked sadly, "Then why can't it be you?" Rue kept apologizing, but his attitude remained firm. Raphael lowered his head, not wanting to meet Rue's gaze. "I was even wondering, if you were to reject me, what excuse I could use to desperately make you stay. But your eyes are telling me I have no chance, right?" Rue didn't answer, and Raphael's expression grew darker and darker. "Rue, tell me what I'm supposed to do? You just had to come at this time and then say something like that. It really puts me in a difficult spot." Because Raphael kept his head lowered, Rue didn't see the look on his face, as if he were about to kill someone. The Crown Prince couldn't tell whether Rue was truly busy or deliberately avoiding him. Once again today, Rue couldn't come keep him company for dinner. Why was his little bunny at home always hiding from him? When he heard that Rue couldn't come, his appetite vanished at once. Yet he still remembered to order someone to send Rue a delicious boxed meal. The supervisor could tell the Crown Prince was in low spirits and tried to comfort him. "Recently, your relationship with the Jazz has gotten a lot closer." The Crown Prince knew very well that whenever there was the slightest chance, his little white rabbit would run away. He pulled open the cabinet door and looked at that red wig. That time, he thought he had caught him, but the other still escaped all the same. The night of the summer ball 4 months ago was also the first time he went to 7th Street, the place with lots of inns, especially convenient for those relationships that couldn't bear the light of day. Just like now, between him and the woman in the carriage, as Rue would put it, "I have never taken anyone seriously." He hadn't expected to hear Raphael's voice there. It sounded like he was telling someone to wait for him while he went to the back to drive the carriage over. The Crown Prince lifted the carriage curtain and at a glance saw Rue by the roadside. He and Raphael had actually come to a place like this. He immediately got out of the carriage and walked up to Rue. "Do you know what you're doing?" Rue answered blankly, "I'm waiting for someone." What exactly was his relationship with Raphael? Rue had been mingling in social circles for so many years. There was no way he didn't know what people came here for. Unwilling to accept it, he pressed, "Are you sure you want to be with Raphael?" Rue was like an emotionless robot. "He told me to wait for him. May I get in the carriage? I'm cold." Before the Crown Prince could react, Rue had already climbed into the carriage on his own, and a woman's shriek rang out from inside. He immediately had his attendant send the woman back. Did this guy understand what it meant to get into someone else's carriage in a place like this? He wanted to check whether Rue was drunk, but Rue said he wasn't. Right then and there, the Crown Prince didn't believe him. He simply raised his hand and removed Rue's mask. It really was him, the genuine article, so he must actually be drunk. Rue looked at him. "Can I take off your mask? I don't even know who you are." The Crown Prince thought, he's so drunk he can't even recognize people. Yet he dares to casually get into a stranger's carriage. Had he always done this in the past? The more he thought about it, the angrier he got, but he still didn't stop Rue from taking off his mask. The next second, Rue raised his hand and touched his face, asking, "Why are you wearing a wig? You're clearly blonde, very dazzling." Rue came so close he was almost pressed up against him, and he suddenly thought, could he take this chance to hold on to him tightly? When Rue asked where they were going, he directly said they were going to a hotel to have him, but Rue actually wasn't flustered at all. Could it be that he and Raphael had long been used to this kind of thing? Yet the Crown Prince couldn't suppress his excitement at that moment. He had Rue feed him a candy. The sweetness entered his mouth, and he still didn't dare believe this was real. It felt even better than a dream, but the more it felt like this, the more jealous the Crown Prince became. "Are you like this with anyone?" Rue repeatedly denied it. "Then why did you get into my carriage?" "Because Rue said he was too cold." The Crown Prince immediately pulled him into a tight hug. "Is it a little better now? Are you still cold?" Obviously, he was still angry, yet he couldn't bear to see Rue feeling wronged at all. That night, he couldn't believe he was capable of going that crazy. Rue looked drunk, yet he could still call his name over and over again. Early the next morning, because he had to go attend Parliament, he could only leave a note telling that person to come and find him. But that person never came, instead hiding far, far away. If it hadn't been for this case weighing on him so heavily he couldn't breathe, he would never have possibly come here of his own accord. What to do when the person you just friend-zoned looks like he's about to lose control? Rue could feel Raphael growing more and more emotional. Just when he was at a complete loss, someone barged straight in. Rue, who had just breathed a sigh of relief when he saw who it was, only felt even more embarrassed instead. He saw that the Crown Prince's chief of guards first apologized to Raphael. What the hell? Then he immediately turned to Rue and said that the Crown Prince was still waiting for him. Raphael was obviously holding back his anger. "You barged in here just to take him away?" The director said it was indeed very rude, but it was the Crown Prince's order. Anyone would be furious if a lover who'd made plans never showed up and might even be cheating on them. So the Duke should be able to understand. I thought, this old man is really ruthless. How can he rub salt into someone's wound like that? Seeing that Raphael didn't believe him, he kept twisting the knife. "Do you not even watch the news?" "And no." Then he looked at Rue again. "No. Does the Duke still have matters to attend to? Your lover is still waiting for you." Rue thought it might be better to cut off Raphael's hopes once and for all. When Rue followed the director out of the Duke's residence, a large group of reporters instantly swarmed over. "Bill, please say something." A large group of reporters instantly swarmed over outside. He was coming out of the Duke's residence early in the morning. Now there was really no way to explain clearly his relationship with the Duke. How did these reporters know his movements? How was this supposed to end? But the director was unhurried, leading him calmly forward. Only then did he see that the Crown Prince's carriage was parked not far away. At this moment, the Crown Prince also stepped down from the carriage. Why is he here? Rue's heart tightened, but he still quickened his pace. But just as he walked up to the Crown Prince grabbed him in one motion and pulled him straight into his arms. Right in front of the reporters, the Crown Prince stamped a mark that belonged to him alone on him. Rue's face flushed and his heart pounded, and everyone around was completely stunned. After that, the Crown Prince completely ignored the crowd of onlookers and directly pulled Rue into the carriage. As soon as they got into the carriage, the Crown Prince began to complain about how wronged he felt. "You clearly promised me that you wouldn't see Raphael again. How long has it even been? And you went to find him again. Are you having fun playing me like this?" Seeing the look on his face, Rue felt like he really was scum and could only hurry to explain. "I went to make things clear with him." The Crown Prince asked, not entirely sure of himself. "Did you come to reject me?" Rue didn't deny it, but he couldn't help being curious. The person he had liked for 10 years, yet had never been able to get close to. They had even gone to school together. Was it because of Raphael? So after finding out that Raphael liked him, the Crown Prince started treating him well. Even if that wasn't it, though he and Raphael didn't look alike, their personalities were quite similar. But why did the answer he pieced together for himself make him feel so miserable? The Crown Prince was really speechless at Rue's train of thought. How could he possibly like that idiot Raphael? How could he possibly like that idiot Raphael? Seeing Rue jealous like this actually put the Crown Prince in an even better mood. But every time he came to see Raphael, he had to be punished for it. Even so, ignoring Rue's objections, he still had a deep exchange with Rue in the carriage. Rue felt like he had gone insane. To actually do something like that with Metal in a carriage. What was even more outrageous was that Metal actually said he wanted Rue to get pregnant with his child. As soon as he said that, Rue exploded. He clearly had someone he'd liked for a long time. Rue himself was nothing but a ridiculous stand-in. Get me pregnant? What on earth are you trying to do? Seeing Rue this furious, the Crown Prince also understood. He probably didn't stand much of a chance. He tossed out a line as if casually. Then how about marrying me? Rue sneered. Your Highness, that is not how you propose. Let alone, that's not how you propose. Rue basically just thought he was joking. What Rue was really worried about now was, what do I do now? How is the news supposed to be written? No, actually, how is the news supposed to be written? Anyone could guess what they did in the carriage. Anyone could guess what they did in the carriage. When his hand touched the door handle, the Crown Prince's voice came from behind him. What if I'm not joking? Rue turned back, only to see Metal looking almost excessively serious. What if I truly want to marry you? As he spoke, he took Rue's hand and asked very softly, would you still run away? Rue couldn't tell if he was serious or not, and could only press down his racing heartbeat and say, Your Highness, there are some things you can't just joke about. You can't be with the person you love, so you find someone similar to marry. That's far too frivolous. Your marriage isn't just your own business. That would be the Crown Princess of the Empire, the future Empress. With that, Rue pushed open the carriage door. No matter what was outside, he had to go out and face it. He saw that things outside were actually not as bad as he'd imagined. The carriage had long since stopped at the palace gates, not out on the main street. That guy still knew where to draw the line. Seeing the attendants' awkward expressions, not daring to look at him, Rue instantly wanted to sink through the ground from shame and got out of the carriage at once. Who knew that just as his foot touched the ground, his leg went weak and he fell straight down from the carriage. Behind him, he only had time to hear the Crown Prince let out a cry of alarm. The Crown Prince immediately yanked Rue up, who had wanted to lie on the ground and play dead. He kept shouting, Hurry and call the Imperial Physician. At that moment, Rue felt like dying. Could you stop shouting and just walk away? Would that kill you? Seeing the scrape on Rue's face, the Crown Prince's temper flared up at once. Look at you, what state are you in now? You still care about that bit of pride? Your hand has only just healed and now you've added new injuries. Can't you take proper care of yourself? Rue was stunned for a few seconds by the fierce anxiety on his face and could only say softly that he was fine. The next second, the Crown Prince suddenly scooped him up and turned to head into the palace hall. The posture was far too embarrassing, and Rue hurriedly told him several times to put him down. But the Crown Prince lowered his voice and threatened, If you still want to walk by yourself, I'll give the order for the attendants to. What? You're going to walk? Then I'll order the attendants to lay several layers of carpet from inside to outside. If you don't want this to become known to everyone, then behave yourself. In the Crown Prince's bedchamber, the Imperial Physician had already finished bandaging Rue's wounds. Seeing the Crown Prince staring blankly at Rue for a long time, the Imperial Physician cautiously asked for instructions. Then, do I still need to come here tomorrow? Hearing that it would be enough to apply the medicine on time, the Crown Prince said directly that he would help Rue change the dressings. Once the Imperial Physician got the answer, he immediately slipped away tactfully. Rue said in a low voice, I can handle it myself. I want to wash up before sleeping. The Crown Prince ignored what he said and instead asked, Do you want to eat or do you want to sleep? Right now, Rue only wanted to wash up and then sleep. The Crown Prince lay back down on the bed, as if calculating something. You're still not sleepy? You don't even want to eat, so what are you washing for? Wait until you wake up, then wash properly. Rue was indeed so sleepy he could hardly stand it. Although it felt strange down there was nothing wrong with washing after he woke up. What ill intent could the Crown Prince possibly have? The Crown Prince just wanted a baby. Rue dreamed again of that golden dragon, pitifully twining around him. Baby is so hungry. Baby wants to eat. The little dragon was making such a fuss that Rue was quickly woken up. The Crown Prince beside him frowned and asked, Why did you get up? When he heard that Rue was hungry and wanted to eat, the Crown Prince's tone immediately softened. All right, I'll have them start preparing it now. Rue felt a little embarrassed and whispered, I don't want to eat a meal. I want to eat strawberries. Although the little dragon cub hadn't said exactly what it wanted to eat, the moment it opened its eyes, he just knew. The little one wanted strawberries. The Crown Prince could hardly believe it. What did you say you want to eat? Rue's ears burned hot. I know it's strange, but right now I just want to eat strawberries. He also knew that it was already autumn now, so where would strawberries come from? But he just had this feeling that if he couldn't eat them, He really might cry on the spot in that little cub's place. Tada could only find an excuse to take his leave first, in case his emotions lost control later. The Crown Prince was even more speechless. Just because he wants to eat strawberries, he's leaving? This excuse for running away is way too perfunctory. As he spoke, he pulled Rue back and made him sit on the bed again. You're not going anywhere. I'll have them go look right now. Before leaving, he didn't forget to remind Rue once more not to run around. Not long after, the Crown Prince managed to get strawberries for Rue. Rue's eyes lit up instantly. After a brief polite question, he directly grabbed the strawberries and stuffed them into his mouth. Seeing how he didn't care about his image at all, the Crown Prince couldn't help sighing, wondering how he was supposed to be the future mistress of this place. He had the strawberries put into a plate, then led Rue over to sit properly on a chair, even placing a fork by his hand. Rue couldn't bother with politeness either and ate several plates in one go. Only then did he remember he should thank the Crown Prince next to him, who had been watching him the whole time. The Crown Prince stared at him without blinking. This stuff is rare in this season, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Just now, I even thought you were going to run away again. Every time you try to run away from me, I really feel very sad. Rue's mind went completely blank. Is he using me to confess to his little white rabbit? Gulp. Seeing that Rue was still in a daze, the Crown Prince asked whether he wanted to eat a bit more. Only then did Rue realize he had eaten so much without noticing, and hurriedly said he was full and wouldn't eat anymore. I said I'm full. I'm not eating anymore. The Crown Prince saw he still seemed listless and asked him again if he was sleepy. Rue nodded. So the Crown Prince held Rue's hand and continued back so they could catch up on sleep. Rue suddenly thought of a more serious problem. Wouldn't the Crown Prince find him strange? If he found out Rue was pregnant, how would he react? He's so smart. Has he already started to suspect me? But he's acting just like usual, even gentler than before. Rue kept staring at him, and the Crown Prince smiled and said, "What is it, my little white rabbit? You're not moved just by a few strawberries, are you?" Of course I am. In this season, he managed to find strawberries for me in less than an hour. How could I possibly not be moved? The Crown Prince suddenly rewarded him with another cuddle. I really can't take it. Go to sleep, you've hardly rested at all. But when on earth will the Crown Prince finally realize? Rue couldn't fall asleep for a long time. He had truly fallen in love with metal. When exactly did it start? He couldn't say, but once he confirmed his feelings, it actually hurt even more. Even if he weren't carrying someone else's child, wanting to be with the Crown Prince would still be just as difficult. Now it's even more impossible. Besides, the Crown Prince already has someone he likes. I'm just a plaything in his game, and this game should be coming to an end soon. At that moment, the little thing in his belly suddenly moved. Rue was startled. How come his stomach felt like? He hurriedly tried to push away the Crown Prince, who was holding him very tightly. When he lifted his head, he only saw the Crown Prince's sleeping profile. Rue called out a few times in a low voice, but the other person didn't react at all. So he really is asleep. A false alarm, but this matter must be dealt with as soon as possible. But after Rue fell sound asleep, the Crown Prince quietly got up without a sound. As soon as he stepped out the door, he gave a cold order to the steward. "Bring me the medical officer Pitu who treated Rue." The steward was stunned. Did he do something wrong? Yes, he made a grave mistake, vomiting for no reason and always feeling sleepy, an ever-growing appetite, and then just now, that obvious movement in the belly. These were enough for the Crown Prince to be sure. Rue was pregnant. That reckless fellow Pitu had actually dared to lie to him. Rue slept straight through until evening. When he found that the Crown Prince was not in the room, he simply went to take over his shift. As soon as Rina saw the injury on his face, she immediately complained. Did the commander go off to catch criminals on his own again? Feeling guilty, Rue touched the bandage on his face. I accidentally fell off my horse. He definitely couldn't say he'd gone weak in the legs and fallen while stealing something. Next week, seeing that he didn't look seriously hurt, Rina couldn't be bothered to press further and simply said that everything was arranged. Departure on Tuesday next week, with 1 month's time. Rue had been looking forward to getting it over with as soon as possible. But when he heard this news, he just couldn't feel happy at all. Rina stared at his expression. What's wrong? I heard from Pitu that it's already been 5 months. You can't delay it any longer. I know, don't worry. Pitu has also arranged for a trustworthy doctor to accompany you. Why? Do you still want to give birth to the child? Rue shook his head, but his eyes were full of dejection. Ever since he started dreaming about the little dragon, he had never again thought about killing him. Rina saw it at a glance. Rue didn't want to abort him at all. If you can't bear it, then keep him. If that won't work, take him abroad and hide. Whatever happens, what you want is the most important. Rue let out a sigh, his voice very soft. Rina, I think I might have fallen for the crown prince. Rina flared up at once. Are you serious? She stared at Rue, only to see him lower his head without saying a word. To be honest, I noticed long ago. I just didn't think the captain would catch on this quickly. The way you look at the crown prince has completely changed. So what are you planning to do? Rue did the math in his head. Whether it was taking leave or resigning, in any case he could not stay in the empire any longer. As long as he left this place, that game between him and metal would come to an end. Suddenly, a clanging, crashing sound came from nearby. The two of them instantly tensed up and turned to give chase. They saw a carriage pull to a stop, and a man in a black robe stepped down from it. He dragged a black, human-shaped sack out of the carriage. It had already been 5 months. If she didn't leave now, her belly would be impossible to hide. The case hadn't been solved yet, and Rue was the lead officer in charge, so whether she resigned or took a long leave, she would draw attention. And right at this moment, the killer appeared. There was no way Rue and Rina would let him go. The moment he spotted them, he immediately tried to escape in his carriage. He completely ignored Rina standing in front of him and drove the carriage straight at her. After confirming that Rina was not seriously hurt, Rue swung onto his horse and gave chase at once. No matter what, he couldn't let the man get away. Just as Rue was about to catch up, a gun suddenly extended out from inside the carriage, and in the next second there was a gunshot. Fortunately, it only hit Rue's horse. Rue was thrown from the saddle and slammed heavily onto the ground. Clutching his belly and trembling, he forced himself to stand up. Thankfully, he had shielded his abdomen, letting his shoulder and leg hit the ground first. He hadn't expected that man to actually have a gun. Such a thing could only be carried with royal permission, so his status was definitely anything but simple. Just then, a member of the troop came running over, leading a horse. Rue didn't say a single word. He swung onto the horse and took off in pursuit. But it was still too late. Even the shadow of the carriage was gone. Rue stared at the tracks on the ground. Either they led to Raphael's estate or to Arael's estate. But without a search warrant, he couldn't investigate either of them. Arael was the only red-haired man in the royal family. Could it be that the child's father was a monster in human form? At that moment, Rina caught up, her voice shaking with anxiety as she shouted, "Captain Pitu has been taken away. He was taken away by the royal knights." Rue jolted and pressed. Why did they arrest him? They say he deceived the crown prince. Rue couldn't care about anything else and turned to rush to the royal knights. When they personally make a move, the ones they arrest are usually condemned to death or people whose entire households will be confiscated. How could it possibly be Pitu's turn? Pitu had only concealed the fact that he was pregnant. But when he reached the royal knights and asked several times in a row, the captain only replied with one sentence: "Classified, cannot be disclosed." Rue had no choice but to go back to find the crown prince. At the moment he saw the crown prince, Rue froze and didn't know how to begin. Seeing that he was injured again, the crown prince flew into a rage on the spot. "What happened? How did you end up like this?" Rue didn't dare look him in the eyes. His voice lowered. "I fell off my horse by accident while chasing a criminal, but I'm fine." "You call this fine?" The crown prince pinched Rue's chin, forcing him to lift his eyes to look at him. "You call this fine? You're not alone anymore." So he had known all along. Rue turned his head to avoid his hand. "I really am fine, Your Highness. I know this is a serious crime, but Pitu didn't mean to deceive you. He only lied because he wanted to help me." The crown prince quietly listened to him finish, but he still hadn't heard the answer he wanted. Then whose is it?" Pitu is tight-lipped. "I can't pry anything out of him. What happened that time already showed me how reckless you can be. But you even went and got yourself pregnant, which really gave me a fright." Rue was even more confused. "What, that time? What do you mean I really fool around?" In the next second, the crown prince suddenly leaned in, with a hint of expectation in his tone. "Don't tell me, it's mine?" Rue denied it at once. "No, I was already pregnant before I got together with you." The crown prince let out a cold laugh. "Really?" Rue looked at him, and her heart suddenly felt empty. "You don't even ask me how I got pregnant? Well, of course, you only ever saw me as a game. If I said the child was yours, what kind of expression would you have?" Suddenly, the crown prince's tone sank, almost interrogating. "Whose child is it?" "Exactly?" But Rue himself still hadn't figured it out, and he didn't want to admit it had anything to do with that person, especially since that person might even be a human demon. It wasn't enough that the person he liked treated him as a plaything. He even forced him to face reality. They were impossible, and he also had to say whose child he was carrying. Seeing that Rue stubbornly refused to speak, the crown prince instead flung out a line in a fit of pique. "I don't care whose it is." As he spoke, he handed Rue the letters in his hand. These are all the correspondence between you and Teraha. You were trying to confirm whether that cesarean section surgery could go smoothly, and you even requested a month of leave. You wanted to get rid of it and you didn't want anyone to know, right? Seeing that Rue didn't refute him, he lowered his voice and went on. Then do it here. I'll keep it secret for you. Rue looked at the crown prince in disbelief. Of course he understood the weight of that sentence. Once they were found out, the crown prince would be dragged down with him. Rue couldn't figure out why he was willing to risk himself to help him. The crown prince was still trying to persuade him. Teraha is far too chaotic. It's full of savages there. Just have the operation here. I won't let you go to a place that dangerous. Rue was still in a daze, not reacting to his suggestion at all. The crown prince gripped his shoulders and gave him a light shake, then raised his hand to stroke Rue's cheek. What's wrong? Weren't you planning to have the operation? But Rue turned his head to avoid his touch. No, I just haven't made up my mind yet. The crown prince's brows immediately knitted tight. What did you say? If you want to keep the baby, 1 month is nowhere near enough. The crown prince suddenly seemed to think of something, and his expression instantly darkened. So you're planning to look for the child's father? Don't even think about it. Rue was frightened by the look on his face and, on instinct, took a step back. That single step completely ignited the crown prince. He grabbed Rue abruptly. I don't agree. Don't even think about running away. Tell me right now, what are you really thinking? Are you planning to go look for the child's father? No, I was planning to go to Teraha first, then really think this through. The crown prince narrowed his eyes, his tone turning icily hard. Sounds so nice. Decide after you get there. If you get rid of him, it'll be just about 1 month, won't it? If he's born, are you planning to raise him for a few years and then come back? Or is it that you never intended to come back at all? The moment he thought of that possibility, the crown prince almost lost control. He suddenly pulled Rue into his arms, frantically trying to prove Rue was his. As soon as Rue resisted, he pushed him onto the bed and gripped his hands in an unrelenting hold. Rue was forced to let out a scream on the spot. The crown prince snorted coldly. Don't think I'll let you go just because of this. After speaking, he directly went to pull off Rue's pants. He stared painfully at the scrape on Rue's knee, still saying that he really had no way to deal with him, refusing treatment. And he called this nothing serious? Why did he love to lie so much? His little rabbit never learned his lesson. He was his, and he would never be allowed to leave him. After a storm like that, the crown prince instead found himself hoping even more that this child was his own. But it just wasn't. What if it really were my child? Rue clearly knew that was my child, and still wanted to get rid of him. Would I be so angry I'd just twist Rue's neck off? Thinking of this, he instead muttered, "Thank goodness it's not my child." Hearing this sentence, Rue finally couldn't hold on anymore and burst into tears. Hearing this sentence, Rue finally couldn't suppress it and started crying, and the crown prince looked at the grieving Rue in a panic. What's wrong? Don't cry. Rue's face was covered in tears. Let's end this game right now. Plop. Even if you cut off the first core support, it doesn't matter. I'll bear all the consequences. I can't go on like this with you anymore. I hate this game. I don't want to stake my life on it anymore. The crown prince asked in a fluster. Are you going to leave me? Yes, I'm going to Teraha, or I can go anywhere at all. I so wish this game had never started. If I could go back, I would absolutely never have accepted his highness. The crown prince grabbed Rue, who was about to leave, and pleaded in a low voice. Don't say things like that. Don't leave me. Rue shook off his hand. You'll find someone who resembles that person more. The crown prince suddenly lunged forward, pinned Rue down on the bed, and held him there with an iron grip. Time and time again, he coaxed Rue through his breakdown, his lips by Rue's ear as he begged over and over, Rue, don't go, all right? The crown prince himself had no idea what he should do to make him stay. All he could see was Rue's sleeping face, still streaked with drying tear tracks. I was only afraid you'd get hurt, afraid you'd come to hate me. But that time, you were the one who walked over to me. After you let me have you, how am I supposed to let go? But Rue knew nothing. Sob, he saw Little Dragon in his dream. Little Dragon also sensed how sad he was and cried so hard he couldn't stop. Rue sat down beside Little Dragon, his heart aching with emptiness, and said in a low voice, I'm sorry. I originally wanted to protect you well. But Teria really is dangerous. If you go to the north, maybe it'll be better. He thought again of Metal's words. Good thing it's not my child. And his tears fell all over again, by rights, with Metal saying that he shouldn't have felt sad. But why did his chest feel like it had a boulder on it, pressing him so hard he almost couldn't breathe? Of course he knew this wasn't Metal's child, but Metal's sentence forcibly turned the Rue who had once hoped the child would be his into a complete joke. That whole, if you get pregnant I'll marry you, was nothing but a joke as well. But then why could he still, with no burden at all, use that kind of affectionate gaze to beg Rue to stay. Every time it made Rue unable to help misunderstanding. Does Metal also like him? Clearly knowing it was impossible, he still stayed. Obviously he just needed to leave. So why did his heart hurt so much? He really wanted to stay by that person's side. Suddenly, the little dragon lightly patted him with its tail. He understood. The little dragon was comforting him. He understood. The little dragon was comforting him. No matter what, he looked at the little dragon as if he had steeled himself. No matter what happens, I must give birth to you. He remembered that before he fell asleep. The crown prince had said he would go call a doctor. He suddenly sobered up. If it were only to treat his injuries, the one called should be the imperial physician. He had gone specifically to get a doctor. Could it be that he wanted to perform surgery? When Rue thought of this, he immediately stood up to leave. Very soon, relying on his bit of skill, he escaped from the crown prince's palace. But as he walked in the alley, he kept feeling that someone was following behind him. Could it be that the crown prince had caught up? What right did he have to keep Rue trapped by his side forever? The matter of the pregnancy was already known to the crown prince and the royal knights. Before the news spread, he had to leave here as quickly as possible. Right, he still had to tell Rina. The killer was most likely between Raphael and Arael. It seemed he had to go back to the commander's office first. Just then, he sensed someone really was drawing closer from behind. He turned around, his hand instinctively reaching to his waist, but his waist was empty. There was nothing there. What came into view was actually Duke Raphael. Raphael swung the stick and smashed it directly onto his head. Before Rue passed out, he finally understood. The real murderer was him. When the crown prince returned to his bedchamber, he found that Rue was gone. From when he left to when he came back, not even half an hour had passed. He can't even walk steadily, yet he's still thinking of running away. The crown prince was so angry that he actually laughed. At this moment, the supervisor also brought the imperial physician over. He shouldn't have gone far yet. Send men to look for him at once. If he can't be found nearby, then go to his home and also to his captain's office. Send another team to keep a close watch on Rina's movements. The crown prince's heart sank. He wouldn't have gone to look for the child's father, would he? Rue was 5 months pregnant, and the child could be his as well. What right did that man have to be so sure it wasn't his? Doesn't matter. Before the child is born, that man must be eliminated. By then, Rue and the child will naturally belong to me alone. Who exactly is the child's father? First, list out every suspicious member of the royal family, one by one. It might be a bit troublesome, but that's fine. In the end, they can only be mine. The crown prince racked his brains trying to catch his little rabbit, yet his little rabbit still managed to escape. Very soon, the guards captured a reporter from a newspaper. The reporter said he saw Rue being taken away by a man in a black robe. The crown prince's eyes flew wide open. This was bad. His little rabbit was in danger. On the other side, just as Rue's carriage arrived at its destination, he woke up. His whole body was limp. He couldn't even struggle, and could only let Raphael carry him into the basement. The room was covered in blood, tools scattered everywhere. So this was where the killer had really done the deeds. It was right next to the room where he had taken him to see the deer last time. Raphael tied him tightly to the stool, then turned to fiddle with those tools, as if picking the one that felt best in his hand. Rue didn't beat around the bush and asked directly, "You're that serial monster, aren't you?" Raphael turned his head to look at him and actually didn't deny it. So the criminal they had been desperately chasing had been by his side all along, and he actually hadn't noticed a thing. How ironic. Even more ironic, the people around him had even thought Raphael was the most suitable one. A flash shot through Rue's mind: black hair, white skin. He subconsciously asked himself, did I miss some key detail? He and those victims really did share something in common. The more he thought about it, the worse it felt. Raphael gave a gloomy smile. It's not that you resemble them, it's that they resemble you. That's why I killed them. Rue had never imagined that he would actually become the reason for his killings. Raphael suddenly wrapped his arms around Rue's leg and rubbed his head against it. You have no idea how much I love you. Rue stared at his movements, feeling only nauseated. What kind of logic is that? You love me, so you kill everyone who looks like me. Rue had once thought Raphael was a real gentleman, and in the end, he was a murderous freak. Truly a murderous freak. Rue thought about what might happen next and asked Raphael directly, are you also planning to do the same as before? Torture me, beat me, and then force yourself on me again? Raphael seemed to think of something that made him happy, and his face flushed. How could I possibly treat you like that? I'll make sure you stay just like this forever. For this, I practiced making specimens for a long time. When the time comes, you'll be able to stay with me every single day. Rue suddenly remembered that deer from last time. Then what about the day of the summer ball? That day, I was originally supposed to leave with you, but I don't remember anything. I clearly didn't drink that much. You drugged me, didn't you? At a time like this, Raphael couldn't even be bothered to pretend anymore. So what if I did? Weren't you drinking happily? The next second, he suddenly exploded in anger. Didn't I tell you to wait for me there? Why did you leave? The carriage was right behind. I just told you to wait a bit. Why weren't you there anymore? Rue thought, now it all lines up. He left, so Arail must be the child's father. Seeing that Rue kept silent, Raphael suddenly lost control and grabbed him violently. I clearly gave the order. Why didn't you wait for me? And you even nodded in response to my confession. Rue fell silent. That was only because the drug was forcing me. So what? I had waited so long. And in the end, I actually slept with someone who only looked like you. A chill ran through Rue. What he was talking about should be the first victim. Suddenly, Rue smiled and said to Raphael, then the one who was with me wasn't your Grace the Duke either. That day, I slept with some man. Because of the drug, I don't know who it was, but I remember that night. We were very passionate, very intense. Luckily, this child has nothing to do with Raphael. Compared to a human demon, he'd rather the child's father be a man with a family. In this situation, never mind being born, even staying alive is hard. He has to make Raphael lose control first. That way, Raphael won't notice that he's slowly working himself free of the ropes. Rue continued to describe the details of that night. Actually, I always thought it was you, but luckily it wasn't. As expected, the more Raphael listened, the more furious he became. Who on earth was it? He wanted nothing more than to tear that man to pieces on the spot. He grabbed Rue by the throat and forced him to say who the man from that day was. Just as Rue was about to suffocate, Raphael suddenly flung him aside again. Rue fell to the ground, coughing uncontrollably. Yet Raphael's anger instantly vanished, and he actually asked with a look of concern, "Are you okay? Does it hurt?" The speed of that face change was insanely deranged. Seeing that the rope was almost undone, Rue kept provoking him. "I'm guessing you're definitely going to cut open my belly in a bit. So, to keep you from being scared by what's in my belly, I'll make it clear first. I'm pregnant. I got pregnant that day, and I even have to thank you for it." Sure enough, Raphael reacted exactly as Rue had expected and exploded again. "You filthy creature? Who the hell are you?" Rue, however, laughed. "Weren't you the one who fed me that drug? Didn't you personally cause all of this?" Raphael was shaking with rage as he turned to fetch his tools. "Just a little bit more. I still have to stall for a while longer." Rue watched Raphael approach step by step, an axe dangling from his hand. Rue lowered his voice and urged, "Didn't you say you wanted to turn me into a specimen? Shouldn't you dress me up first? The way I look now, isn't it way too pathetic?" Raphael shook his head. "No, you've always been perfect. There's just a little extra thing on you, but that's fine. I'll dig it out for you right away." The moment he finished speaking, he swung the axe down toward Rue's belly. Rue suddenly shouted, "If you chop me with an axe, it'll look awful." Whether it was those words that worked or not, at that most dangerous instant, the axe suddenly veered off course. How did this man manage to pretend to be so normal, making everyone believe he was honest and upright? Raphael tossed the axe aside and reached out to unfasten Rue's clothes. Rue said in a panic, "But I just finished with the crown prince, and what's his is still inside me. How are you going to clean that out?" That one line drove Raphael straight into complete madness. He whirled around, yanking out a short knife, and kept shrieking, "I'm going to kill you, you filthy creature." Just then, Rue, who had just broken free, groped for the axe beside him. As Raphael slashed down, Rue swung the axe back at Raphael's leg. Seeing Raphael fall to the ground and stop moving, Rue's heart clenched and he immediately rushed toward the door. His fingertips were just about to touch the doorknob. The next second, Raphael grabbed him by the throat. Rue swung his fist as he turned around, but missed, and was instead seized by Raphael in one move. Raphael yanked Rue's hair, trembling with rage. "Are you going to abandon me again and go to metal?" With that, he slammed Rue hard onto the ground. Rue watched Raphael limp toward him. That blow just now had already drained all his strength. He had always wanted to get rid of the baby, but in this moment, he truly wanted to give birth to it. He wanted to see what this child would end up looking like. If he had known earlier that he would die here, he would definitely have set it to metal. To die just like this felt far too unfair. As Raphael came closer and closer, Rue became even more unwilling to let it end like this. He even couldn't help wondering, if he confessed, would Metal frown in embarrassment? He really wanted to know the answer. Raphael walked up to Rue and raised the knife in his hand. He didn't notice the axe at his feet and stepped on it directly. With a snap, his leg was already injured, and as his foot slipped, his whole body fell backward. Rue felt a tight, aching pressure in his chest, but still forced himself to crawl bit by bit toward the door. But he couldn't even stand up, so how could he possibly escape? He hadn't crawled far before Raphael pinned him down. Rue thought he would probably be hacked to death by a flurry of blows. He really failed this child. He had never properly protected him. He only wanted just to see metal one last time. He felt his consciousness begin to drift, and it seemed as if the noise from outside was reaching his ears. Wait, suddenly, the door he had always wanted to push open was opened from the outside. His crown prince stood at the doorway, silhouetted against the light. Is this an illusion? The guards quickly pinned Raphael down. The crown prince immediately bent down to check Rue's injuries. Only when the crown prince's hand lightly touched his face did Rue finally confirm. This was not an illusion. How did he know I was here? Should I tell the crown prince that I missed him very much? Seeing Rue like this, the crown prince could no longer suppress his anger. Just to avoid him, he had actually made himself like this. But his heart still ached, and he coaxed him softly. Sleep. Leave this to me. After speaking, he picked Rue up and walked out. Seeing that the crown prince was about to leave, Raphael's butler finally could not help but ask, Your Highness? How did you know? The crown prince let out a cold laugh. It was so obvious that it would be strange not to know. From the moment I heard about this case, I suspected him. The red silk on the first corpse was the special ribbon used in the palace for tying gifts. Moreover, all those clues had been deliberately made to look like Rue. Who else could it be but that useless Raphael? Looking at Raphael, who had been subdued by the guards, the crown prince suddenly thought, if the child's father really is Raphael, then getting rid of him would be simple. Aurel is a married man, so he probably won't compete with him. It's just that blseries will be a bit troublesome to deal with. Thinking of this, his mood suddenly became lighter, and he lowered his head to kiss Rue's forehead in his arms. When Rue woke up, he had to ask him clearly. Raphael, kneeling to the side, was red-eyed and raving. It's all because of this damned slut. It's all because of this filthy thing that I ended up like this, and how much cleaner are you than me? The one you like is someone who doesn't even know who the father of his child is. So disgusting. I'm gonna tear him into little pieces. After hearing this, the crown prince lifted his foot and kicked Raphael flying. Cough, cough. The crown prince kicked Raphael flying with one blow, then stepped on his head, pressing him harshly. How could it be possible that Rue doesn't know who the child's father is? Raphael burst out laughing. He took the drug I gave him. Who knows what thing he played poker with? The crown prince thought of Rue's abnormal state that night, and the urge he'd had to dig out that filthy thing surged up fiercely again. If he was drugged, then everything makes sense. Raphael sneered. You've also played poker with this filthy creature, haven't you? You actually hold in your arms someone carrying another man's bastard. The crown prince raised his foot and kicked him in the head again, and I even happily showed off to him. It's my child, and everything about him will be mine. I finally managed to make up my mind to let him give birth to this child, and I never thought it would turn out like this. Rue walked into the dream, but waited a long time without seeing Xiaolong. He remembered how every time Xiaolong would babble and fuss in front of him, Rue suddenly panicked. Could it be that Xiaolong was hurt? Fortunately, he found him not long after, and immediately rushed over to check. Xiaolong looked a bit weak and was sleeping very deeply, but he wasn't injured. Only then did Rue finally breathe a sigh of relief. Suddenly, vines wrapped Rue and Xiaolong tightly together. Rue jolted awake and ran his hands over his whole body. There were no vines at all. Stepping on the thick wool carpet, he got out of bed and walked over, but he realized he couldn't get out. Was this place a prison? Yet aside from the extra iron door and iron window, everything else was almost exactly the same as Metal's bedchamber. No matter how you looked at it, this did not seem like a place for locking up prisoners. After that, he grabbed everyone who came here and questioned them. The other party only said, "For your peace of mind," and dodged every other question. Did they mistake him for being in league with the human demon? Impossible. If that were the case, Rena would have come to interrogate him long ago. 3 days later, Rena really did come. He tilted his head to look at her, but Rena couldn't explain the reason either. Rena still said, "I don't know," and advised him again. His leg bone was fractured, so he should just stay here and recuperate. With treatment this good, there was nothing to worry about. The standards here were not even lower than those of the crown prince and the back courtyard. In the morning, he said he wanted to eat peaches, and before long, they brought out a whole row of different varieties of peaches. These 3 days, all he did was sleep and eat. So no matter how he thought about it, Rue just couldn't understand why they would keep him locked up while feeding and treating him so well. Rena also said that Raphael would be judged, and that Rue had almost become the last victim. Because Rue had almost become the last victim, Even the royal family would hand down a very heavy punishment. Rue was a bit surprised and figured the case must have had too great an impact. Only after learning that Pitu was fine too did Rue finally breathe a sigh of relief. Thinking of what he cared about most, Rue still told Rina. He had confirmed with Raphael that Raphael was not the child's father. The child's father should be Arail. Rina was stunned on the spot. Arail was a married woman. As if suddenly remembering something, she repeatedly urged Rue, "Just tell me. Don't tell anyone else." Rue thought about it and agreed. He couldn't destroy someone else's family, so he watched Rina prepare to leave. Rue hurriedly grabbed Rina, his voice tightening. "I just want to ask one thing. His Highness the Crown Prince, how is he?" Rina was both exasperated and helpless. It really looked like their family's little cabbage had been completely carried off by a pig. "Don't worry, he's doing more than fine. So fine, he seems like the happiest person in the whole world." Before leaving, Rina still forced down her temper and reminded him, "Don't let your thoughts run wild. If nothing's wrong, then focus on recovering." But why, after hearing that Metal was fine, did Rue not feel happy at all? That day, the way Metal looked at him was so unwavering that Rue thought Metal would at least be a little sad. But Rue was locked up in here, knowing nothing about the outside, no matter what the situation out there really was. For Ryuko's sake, he had to leave as soon as possible. When the Crown Prince arrived, Rue was already fast asleep. These past few days he had been busy to the point he could hardly breathe, and only now managed to squeeze out a little time. But no matter how busy he was, every moment he wanted to come see his little bunny. Yet for the future, there were some things that had to be taken care of first. He couldn't bear to wake Rue, so he moved very gently, changing the medicine on Rue's face. But Rue had worries weighing on his mind and was not sleeping soundly, so he still blinked his eyes open in a daze. The Crown Prince lowered his voice to soothe him. "I'm just applying medicine for you. It's only just past midnight. Sleep a little longer." Rue suddenly sat up and grabbed the Crown Prince. "Your Highness? Why are you keeping me locked in here?" The Crown Prince paused for a moment, his tone even softer. "Be good. It's very chaotic outside." Rue frowned and pressed him. "Is it because of the human demon?" But the Crown Prince said, "No, Raphael was already executed today. He wasn't just a cruel human demon. He also nearly hurt you. He was beyond saving. You're not still thinking that Raphael is the child's father, are you?" Rue immediately shook his head, his throat tightening. "Thankfully, he isn't." The Crown Prince sat down by the bed, his gaze falling on him. "The child should be a little over 5 months now, right?" Rue nodded a bit awkwardly and gave a soft It should have been Pitu who told him. The Crown Prince seemed to be confirming it as he asked again. "It was Pitu who said that, right? Do you feel unwell anywhere? Or is there anything you want to eat?" Rue immediately shook his head and said no. He only wanted to know when he would be allowed to go out. The Crown Prince raised his hand to press against Rue's forehead. His voice lowered very much. "At the fastest, it will still take about 10 days. There's too much going on right now. Wait a few more days and everything will be dealt with soon." After speaking, he lowered his head and kissed Rue on the forehead. "I'll come again tomorrow." Rue's face flushed all at once, and he asked in a small voice, "Could you stay a little longer?" At that, the Crown Prince felt as if his heart was about to explode. My little delicate wife has finally figured it out. The little delicate wife had indeed figured it out. One string of improper remarks from the Crown Prince made Rue so teased that even the tips of his ears turned completely red. Only our long Wheezy silently bore everything, and the two of them kept going all the way until breakfast time. Hearing the attendants knock on the door, Rue hurriedly panicked and stopped them from coming in, forcing himself to find an excuse. "I'm still sleepy. Bring it over later." Rue really was exhausted to the limit. His eyelids kept drooping. He asked His Royal Highness the Crown Prince in a low voice, "Are you going to leave?" The Crown Prince kissed him again, his tone very steady. "I'll leave after you fall asleep." But Rue had no idea at all about everything happening outside. Today, the royal family made a public statement. Sir Rue Alexa is 5 months pregnant, and his wedding with the Crown Prince is being prepared in great haste. When Rue's younger sister Joan saw the newspaper, her heart sank. "A Crown Princess-to-be has appeared in our family, and I actually only found out by reading the paper. No matter how I think about it, it doesn't feel like something to be happy about." His second brother held back a laugh at the side and comforted him. "Don't pull a long face. You're just jealous that Big Brother can marry into the imperial family, and deep down you still feel Big Brother was snatched away by the Crown Prince. Relax. I'll look out for you every day from now on." But this didn't coax Joan at all. With a second brother this unreliable, Whenever he opened his mouth, he only made things worse. In the second guard room, Rina, Pitu, and the others were completely stunned by this series of actions from the Crown Prince. After all, Rue had already confirmed that the child was Arael's, yet the Crown Prince seemed determined to raise this child as if it were his own. This matter involved the future heir to the throne, and Rue would very likely never be able to return to work. Now that the Crown Prince was protecting Rue like a treasure, Rina's head started to ache the moment she thought about how she would have to work twice as hard in the future. She lowered her head and kissed Pitu on the forehead. "I'm going to work. See you tonight." Pitu's face flushed so red it was burning. "Be safe." Ahem. When on earth did these two get together? Who wouldn't want days where you can just lie flat and do nothing? Not only is there good food and drink served to you, at night there's even the handsome Crown Prince personally taking care of him. But Rue still only wanted to get out as soon as possible. And the way people here did things made him increasingly unable to figure them out. First, they measured him from head to toe. They even had to measure the size of his fingers. Were they checking whether he'd been fattened up? And they all looked like they were in a hurry. A few days passed like this. His injuries were almost healed, and finally the chief steward of the Crown Prince's palace came to escort him out. He turned back to look at this place, and a sudden pang of reluctance rose in his chest. He thought as he got into the carriage, with this departure, his game with Metal should also come to an end. Although Metal had said he could help Rue settle everything in the Empire, Rue knew the child was Arael's. For the sake of keeping both sides from being implicated, leaving was the best choice. It was just that, if he did so, he might never see Metal again. But what else could he do? His belly was already starting to show. Thinking of this, Rue finally made up his mind. He looked at the supervisor who had always treated him with great respect and thanked him sincerely. "Thank you for taking care of me during this time." But the supervisor immediately replied, "You don't have to thank me. This is what I should do." He thought that, in the future, he might not trouble the other party anymore either. This carriage was taking the road home, and perhaps this was its last trip. Once back home, he still had to explain everything to his parents and ask them to keep his secret. For now, he could only rely on them to take him away from here. As for Joan and Kuri, it was better not to let them know. The moment Rue stepped through the door, he realized the attendants had been waiting for some time. The formation welcoming him today was actually this grand. He didn't think much of it, assuming it was just because he hadn't come home for so long. He turned his head and asked the butler, "Where are father and mother?" The butler replied respectfully, "In the Imperial Palace." Rue was a bit curious. Was the palace holding another ball? Rue had just been about to ask, "Is the palace holding another ball again?" When the butler was about to answer, only to be interrupted by Joan, who was coming down the stairs. "My God, you still remember which way your front door opens?" Rue felt a little awkward. "Why do you have to talk in such a snarky way?" Joan said, aggrieved and stifling her anger. "What do you think? My own brother, over 5 months pregnant before marriage, and in a few days he's going to marry the Crown Prince. And I, as his younger sister, actually only found out from the newspapers." I said, "Sister Joan, you've really misunderstood him. That Crown Princess-to-be himself is still being kept completely in the dark." A moment later, Rue got back into the carriage and headed straight for the Crown Prince's palace. He couldn't believe it. He flipped through the newspapers, one after another, in his hands. The newspaper said that he and Metal were going to get married next Saturday. But how could he not know anything about it at all? By the time he rushed to the Crown Prince's palace, Metal was already waiting for him at the palace gate. In his anxiety, Rue thrust the newspaper in front of him. "Your Highness, this is bad. The newspaper says we're going to get married." The Crown Prince steadied him, speaking very softly. "Your leg still hasn't fully healed. Don't rush like this. You need to be even more careful now." Rue was practically going out of his mind with worry. The paper even said the child was the Crown Prince's, so how could Metal not be the least bit anxious? Of course Metal wasn't anxious. This was his doing to begin with. Smiling, he took Rue's hand and turned to lead him toward the greenhouse in the back garden. The greenhouse in the rear garden had been decorated especially beautifully today, but Rue only spaced out for a brief moment, because all this was nowhere near enough to smother the panic in his heart. How was it that he was about to marry the Crown Prince? Metal smiled and told him to calm down, saying he had known about it for a long time. Rue was even more confused. If he knew, how could he still be this composed? Looking at this little spoiled wife who still hadn't figured out what was going on and was standing there in a daze, Metal had no choice but to patiently explain things first. The day Raphael was arrested, the fact that you were pregnant was exposed, and everyone present knew. This concerned the royal bloodline, so it was impossible to hide. What's more, at that time you didn't even know who the child's father was. Rue actually didn't want to bring up this topic at all, especially in front of the crown prince. But now he had to make it clear. Who is it? I think I probably already know who the child's father is. When the crown prince heard this, his heart suddenly gave a violent throb, and he immediately pressed, "Who is it?" When Rue said, "Counter-rail," the crown prince's gaze uncontrollably dimmed for a moment, and he said softly, "Didn't you say you didn't remember? Didn't you say you didn't remember?" Rue did not evade the question, and told him everything he knew. Someone had seen him and a red-haired person enter and in that day, and in the royal family, the only one with red hair was a rail. What the crown prince had feared most was how Rue would see him after learning the truth. Fortunately, Rue still hadn't guessed it was him. The crown prince had to seize this opportunity. Perhaps he could obtain the outcome he desired. So he grabbed Rue's hand and led him to the place he had long prepared. But no matter how slow Rue might be, by this point he had figured everything out. Something the royal family had publicly announced could not possibly be just a rumor. So, is he really going to marry the crown prince? He had to ask this clearly. The crown prince's expression was so serious it was almost solemn, and he answered very straightforwardly, "Yes." "Are you unwilling?" This sentence directly stunned Rue. "No, your highness." "Have you been threatened by someone?" The crown prince suddenly dropped to one knee and lifted his gaze to look straight into Rue's eyes. "I know you're very shocked, but because of the child, there really isn't time for you to slowly think it over. You can't possibly let the child be born with the status of an illegitimate child. Can you?" Watching the crown prince kneel there like that, lifting his eyes to stare at him intently, Rue's face instantly burned red. But this child is not his highness's. Yet the crown prince spoke with sincere earnestness. "As long as you marry me, your child will be my child." Rue knew this wasn't right, but he still wanted to be selfish just this once. Rue knelt formally in front of the crown prince, his voice tight. "Why are you doing this? I'm just a character in your game. I called it a game only because I was afraid you'd run away." He added in a low voice, "Every single second I've spent with you is something I fought tooth and nail to obtain. How could it possibly be just a game? From the very start at the academy, the person I liked from beginning to end has only ever been you." When Rue heard this confession, his whole body went rigid, unable to believe it. "Didn't you hate me?" The crown prince could only admit helplessly, "Back then I was too immature." He paused. "I wanted you to notice me, so I racked my brains to bully you." He took Rue's hand and went on, "I don't care whose child you're carrying. Once you give birth, he will be my child. I'll protect him as he grows up. I won't let him suffer any harm. As long as you're willing to stay by my side. Are you willing to marry me?" The person you've been thinking about in your heart for so long suddenly proposes to you. How could you possibly say no? You hardly even have to think about the answer. He clearly knew that the child in his belly belonged to someone else, but Rue just couldn't bring himself to say even a single word of refusal. Metal looked at Rue, who was blushing and silent, and said softly, "I know nothing can be changed now, and it's ridiculous for me to say these things." He took a breath. "But I really like you very much." Rue didn't understand the hint hidden in the crown prince's words. At this moment, he only felt his heartbeat spinning out of control. So the person the crown prince had always liked was him. Seeing this, the crown prince simply took out the ring. It was all prepared too hastily. "I don't even know if you'll like it." Rue's face was burning red, but he still didn't say anything. The crown prince directly lifted his hand and slipped the ring onto his finger. Only then did Rue come back to his senses. "When did you prepare this?" The crown prince smiled a little. "When you were staying in that room." Rue grew even more nervous. "I really can?" The crown prince stood up, reached out his hand, and walked toward him. "Be with me. I really can't live without you." Rue stared at that hand. He knew that even if it wasn't allowed, he still wanted to be with the crown prince, even if someday in the future he might regret it. But in this moment, he couldn't refuse. Rue reached out his hand and finally admitted it. He liked metal. At that, the crown prince finally let out a sigh of relief. Wanting to immediately make his claim, the crown prince grabbed Rue and impatiently ran toward the bedchamber. Of course, in the end, it was our little dragon cub who took on everything again. The wedding day went absurdly smoothly. No one had expected that such a grand ceremony could be prepared in such a short time. Rue knew that the crown prince must have done a lot. After all, there hadn't been any unfavorable rumors about Rue. Just like that, as soon as spring arrived, the noble imperial grandson, the little dragon cub, was born. Rue held the little dragon cub in his arms, his face full of doubt. The little dragon cub looked exactly like a miniature version of Metal. What on earth was going on? Could he have been switched? After all, it had already been a week since the birth, and only now was the child brought for him to see. Rue couldn't help asking Metal beside him, "Is this really my child?" The crown prince reminded him with a smile, Don't call him that. He has a name. Call him Yuel. After saying that, he leaned lightly toward Rue. Of course Yuel is your child. Rue moved close to the crown prince's ear and asked in a lowered voice, don't you think he looks a lot like you? I've been worried all along about what we would do if he was born with red hair. The crown prince looked extremely pleased with himself. It's only natural for a child to resemble his father. What's so strange about that? The conversation had barely started and hadn't had time to go any further when the empress and the emperor arrived, especially coming to see their little grandson. Rue was still a bit unaccustomed to this level of enthusiasm. Metal noticed and found an excuse to take the two of them out first. Not long after, Rina and Pitu also came to visit. The two of them were not very surprised when they saw the child. After all, they had more or less already guessed the truth. Rina lowered her voice and said to Pitu, look at him. He still hasn't figured it out, has he? Pitu was left completely speechless at Rue's slowness. As soon as the two of them left, the room finally quieted down. Rue looked at that miniature Metal. He had never imagined he could have such a beautiful child, but so what if the child looked alike? Ultimately, it still wasn't his child. Today was the first time the royal family had allowed everyone to come visit the little imperial great-grandson. Rue had just seen Rina and the others off not long ago, when another group of noble young ladies arrived. They stared at that dragon cub who looked like the crown prince, liking him to no end, and envying him to no end. Well, what a pity. What made them feel even worse was, those two men they had been thinking about for so long had really ended up together. But now that it was like this, it seemed they couldn't even properly be jealous of anyone anymore. Was that still a pity? All they wanted was for Rue to have another child, one who looked exactly like the crown prince. Rue braced himself and endured these young ladies' overly enthusiastic concern. Fortunately, they wouldn't stay too long. They knew Rue needed rest now. Everyone took their leave and went away, except for one person who deliberately stayed behind. She walked up to Rue and said softly, if I hadn't gotten off the carriage that day, everything you have now should have been mine. That adorable imperial great-grandson should be in my arms as well. Rue frowned. What do you mean by that? The woman gave a cold snort. What? Still pretending to have lost your memory in front of me? On the day of the summer ball, weren't you the one who jumped onto the crown prince's carriage and pushed me off? When the crown prince saw Rue running toward him, he was clearly startled. Rue, why did you come out? You can't be running around right now. As he spoke, he reached out his hand, wanting to touch his delicate little spouse's head. Rue raised his hand and gave a slap, knocking it away directly. Is Yuel your child? The crown prince's heart gave a jolt, but he still forced himself to stay calm. Of course he is my child. Your child is my child. Rue suddenly raised his voice. You know that's not what I meant. The man who slept with me that night at the summer ball, was that your highness? Rue couldn't understand why he never said anything. From marrying Metal to the birth of the child, he had always thought that he was the one who owed Metal. The crown prince did not make a sound. Rue grew even angrier. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you hide it from me? I forgot. But you clearly remember, don't you? The crown prince seemed to have all his strength drained, his voice hoarse. I thought he would grow to look like you. Rue was even more furious. If the child had grown to look like me, were you planning never to tell me for your whole life? The crown prince was silent for a moment, then admitted, if that had really been the case, he indeed would have done so. Rue forced down his emotions and accused him. Do you have any idea how much I've been hurting? The crown prince raised his hand and touched Rue's hair. If you had known from the start that Yuel is my child, would you have been happy? Do you think you could accept it? Accept him tying your whole life down? I was afraid you would abort my child, and I didn't want you to be forced to stay with me just because of the child. When you're with me, you're always resisting, always in pain. His voice tightened, but Rue just couldn't understand. How could he think that way? The crown prince asked uneasily, Are you very angry? Yeah. Rue stared at him. Shouldn't I be angry? You knew about this. Do you know how guilty it makes me feel toward you? Do you know how guilty this whole thing makes me feel toward you? The crown prince suddenly laughed. Seeing you like this, for a moment I almost thought you really cared about me. It even made me have the illusion that you like me very much. Ha! Rue was instantly helpless. Your Highness, I don't know why you want to lie to me, but I really do like you. Maybe last time I didn't make myself clear. I like your Highness's looks, and I also like that strange personality of yours. More importantly, I like it even more when you're gentle with me. The child looking like your Highness, although it's unbelievable, I'm really very happy. When I learned that the person from that night was your Highness, more than being angry, I mostly just felt relieved. Then Rue rose on tiptoe and gave the crown prince a confirmation. I can't do this with just anyone, he said softly. Only with your highness. The crown prince all but lost control as he pulled Rue into his arms, deepening that confirmation. Now that the two of them had finally laid their feelings bare, they could only hope this happiness would continue on and on.